Call this to order.
No, I got you.
On here. Good evening and welcome to the Whitman Hanson School Committee meeting of September 30th, 2020. My name is Chris Scriven. I'm the Vice Chair of the committee and I will be sitting in for Chairman Bob Hayes. Bob has a prior commitment and is unable to attend tonight. As our chair starts every meeting, I'd like to remind you that this meeting is being broadcast live on WHCA TV and online. This meeting is also being recorded for use in the future and will be accessible on the WHCA website, so please keep that in mind. We hold this meeting in accordance, thank you. We hold this meeting in accordance with the order from the Governor of Massachusetts on March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Mr. Small will be participating remotely tonight. And just to double check, Mr. Small, can you hear us? Fred, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm mute, so you can hear the background.
All right, thank you. So all votes will need to be done by roll call. At this time, I'd like to ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd also ask if you could join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. We'll take a roll call. Steve Boyce?
Here.
Now, Dan Culley is not here as of yet. Mike Jones?
Here.
Chris Howard?
Here.
Hillary Niffen?
Here.
Fred Small?
Here.
Don Byers?
Here.
David Forth?
Here.
And Chris Scriven here. Okay. First item on the agenda is I'll be looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 6th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Steve Boyce?
Yes.
Dan Culley, not here. Mike Jones?
Yes.
Chris Howard?
Yes.
Hillary Niffen?
Yes.
Fred Small?
Yes.
Don Byers?
Yes.
David Forth?
Yes.
And Chris Scriven, yes. Thank you. Next is the meeting minutes from September 9th. I'll be looking for a motion for that, to approve that.
So moved.
Second.
Second, yeah, discussion? Go on.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have an amendment I have submitted to Michelle Lindberg. On page 3, it's just a clarification. Under student handbooks, the sentence reads, "At the high school, bandanas are not allowed as a face covering." And it's a clarification. I'd like to amend it to read, "In alignment with the Memorandum of Understanding with WHEA, the committee discussed excluding bandanas in the face covering policy EBCFA."
Okay.
So the clarification, just to elaborate on that, wouldn't necessarily be specific to the high school. It's district-wide, and it includes the policy for district-wide in agreement with the
Okay,
MOU.
thank you. All right, so I'll be looking for a motion to amend.
What was it though? What was the change?
Sorry.
So the way it reads right now indicates that at the high school, bandanas are not allowed as a face covering, but we discussed and we amended the policy to be district-wide, so if a middle school or elementary student were going to wear a bandana, that would be part of the exclusion of
Okay, you're
our
saying?
policy.
A middle schooler can wear?
Oh, no, no. It's just removing really that says at the high school, because essentially.
Clarifying that it's district-wide.
Okay.
Exactly, that we discussed it to align that it's a district-wide exclusion that bandanas are not allowed.
Okay. Any other discussion? Nope. All right, so someone did make a motion already? Don?
I seconded.
Second, David? Okay. And roll call vote. Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Mike Jones?
Yes.
Chris Howard?
Yes.
Hillary Niffen?
Yes.
Fred Small?
Yes.
Don Byers?
Yes.
David Forth?
Yes.
And Chris Scriven, yes. Thank you.
Oh, he didn't. No.
All right, the next,
Chris,
He's
that
in,
was-
he's
so
in.
we voted on the,
oh, I'm correct. Now we're going to take a vote to approve the minutes as amended.
As amended.
Thank you. So I'll take a motion on that.
Motion for that, Mr.
All
Boyce.
right, and after a
Second.
second, from Daunton, okay. Any other discussion? No, okay. So another roll call vote. Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Mike Jones?
Yes.
Chris Howard?
yes,
Hillary Niffen?
Yes.
Fred Small?
Yes.
Don Byers?
Yes.
David Forth?
Yes.
And Chris Scriven, yes. All right, that puts that to rest. Thank you. And the last one is for the meeting minutes from September 15th. Can I get a motion to,
So moved.
by Fred, a second?
Second, Mr. Boyce.
Mr. Boyce, any discussion? David?
I was looking over the 9:15 joint meeting, and there's a couple inaccuracies on there, so I would like to make a motion to table.
The table?
Yeah.
Okay, anybody, can I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion?
What are the inaccuracies?
Yeah, sure. So page, hold on, let me get the right one. So page 3, they say that George Coffey had emailed the former superintendent, and it was Chris George. And then for my review, it didn't go into depth about the DESI review and didn't mention the reasoning as to why I brought it forward, and it left out the individuals that I mentioned. But for the other town officials, they had their people that they mentioned in the document. So I think for the sake of accuracy, I think everything that I added, my timeline needs to be included along with the other public officials' timeline who was given.
What was the first thing that you said, David? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. So George Coffey, it says.
But you said it on page 3? What paragraph on page 3?
Yeah, hold on. Let me just. I got papers
it's,
everywhere.
Actually, page 2, I believe.
Page 2. Okay.
At the second paragraph.
well, 5 lines down.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
Oh, here it
Yep.
is. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. It says George Coffey instead of Chris George. Sorry about that.
Okay.
And then the, if we're doing it by paragraph, I'd say first, second, third, fourth, fifth. The 6th paragraph, 6, yeah, that one I think needs more detail, considering that we spent 4 paragraphs talking about the other town official. And I think for the sake of accuracy, it should mention everything that was spoken about on there, considering the meeting.
Michelle?
Could I ask that Mr. Whitman provide what you would like in the minutes?
Yeah, sure. Could,
And then we'll bring it to the next.
yeah, can I email it to you? Cool, thank you.
Mike?
Michelle, is it through you, is it easier, like, once we get these and we notice an inaccuracy, like, normally we email Michelle and say, hey, can you change this? And normally, is that easier for you?
It doesn't matter.
Rather than come here and do that, or?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Whatever works.
Okay, so we have a motion to table. Did we get a second from Dawn? Yeah, so I'll take a roll call vote to table the meeting minutes from September 15th, 2020. Steve Boyce,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes,
Hillary Niffen,
Yes.
Fred Small,
Yes.
Don Byers,
yes.
David Forth,
Yes.
and Chris Scriven, yes. Thank you. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is, we had Bob Rogers, who will be here tonight, but he's just not here yet, so we're going to hold off on that, and we'll go right to the superintendent report, and we'll start with John Tuffy, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yep.
John, can you come up and give our end-of-the-year report and close out, please?
So in the packet that you have, you should see a page that deals with the line item transfers. It's pretty standard. It's the sort of thing that's happened at this meeting or every year. All this does, with your vote, what we will do is move amounts between different line items so that none of the budgets are in negative numbers. This doesn't increase or decrease the final budget that we have. It doesn't change the spending. It just ensures that, again, the actual expense lines don't exceed 100% of the budget.
Okay, so I guess I'd be looking for a motion to approve
Please.
the closeout of FY 2020 budget report as presented.
so moved.
Second? David, second? Yep. Any discussion? Dawn?
have a question.
Sure.
John, can you just explain, so these, starting right at the top, so Indian Head Elementary teacher salary, this 103,000, is that a surplus in that line that will move to accommodate a deficit in another line? And,
That is, so we're adding to that line item. That's a credit to that line item. It was in deficit. And as you looked further down, you can see the substitute line item for Indian Head also had is now being debited $249. There was a surplus in that line item.
okay,
So if it's a positive number on this, it means it was a negative number on the financial report, on the budget report, and vice versa.
okay.
Okay.
And
Yep.
where it says change to budget and there's no number there, that is not an accident. That's if you added up each of these line items, you'd come to zero.
Any other discussion?
Are we going to
Sorry,
go over
John,
this
go ahead.
separately? I just had a question
Oh,
on
go ahead. I'm
the
sorry.
other,
We'll talk about that separately.
Separate, fair enough.
If
So
I
the
could,
transfers,
could we get the
okay.
vote out of the way, please?
I'm sorry, John?
I said if I could we get the vote done and then we'll
Sure.
move on to the next part?
Absolutely. Okay.
Thank
so
you.
Roll call vote. Steve Boyce,
Yes.
Mike Jones,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Hillary Niffen,
Yes.
Fred Small,
Yes.
Don Byers,
yes.
David Forth,
Yes.
and Chris Scriven, yes. All right.
So now the next part of the closeout actually is to talk a little bit about what happened last year. When you look at the end of the year budget reports, and there are two of them, one deals with revenue, the other deals with expenditures, what you'll see is that we spent 98.6% of the expense budget, and we collected 98.4% of the revenue budget. And there are some reasons for that. And at this point, I may as well mention that you also have seen the E&D report. We managed to get it into the state about on the, I think it was the 12th or 13th of September, and they turned it around quickly. We were among the early people who put it in. The committee may remember early on we talked about revenue shortfalls that we expected from the pre-K program and the full-day program. That was full-day kindergarten program, and that was a function of we stopped collecting fees in March and in fact returned some fees to people who had prepaid. The total amount of tuitions that were returned were $294,000. Additionally, when you look at the revenue side of this, you'll see where there are, it appears as if we hadn't collected all our funds from our member towns when it came to non-mandated transportation, and that was deliberate because we had talked about the fact that we would return to the member towns a portion of the savings that we got from the bus company when it came to non-mandated transportation, and that amounted to $113,000. So even with those two unusual events happening, our E&D is now certified at $609,000, which is slightly more than what we were certified for last year. Last year it was $605,000. The $609,000 number includes the use of $350,000 of E&D in this year's budget. To maybe add a little perspective to that, at the E&D for last year was certified at $605,000. We are using $350,000 towards the budget. The net of that is $255,000. That's what we would have if we came out even, if we received as much as we spent. So the fact that we have $609,000 means that we have put $355,000 back into E&D, which is fund balance or free cash if you're a municipality. And it also means that really for the first time in a number of years, we are adding, even if it is a modest amount, we are adding to E&D, not using E&D. We are starting to do what we should be doing, which is building up a rainy day fund. And of course, the other part is that we are using $350,000 in E&D, but that is a reduction from what we've been doing these last many years as well. So we're sort of a little less dependent on it. So all in all, I think as the finance side of the school department, I think those are all good signs.
Chris?
So just a couple comments, I think. So one, to Mr. Tuffy's point, yes, the $4,000 or $5,000 is definitely a move in the right direction, but I would not classify that, nor do I think you would, as a material amount, right? We're not really moving the needle, so to speak, much. So I think that's important to understand, and I think for the folks that are watching or listening in, that the number that we have in front of us, that 5% number that we could have of 2.7 million, that is a big difference from the 609,000 we are at today. So we do have a lot of work to do, I think, when it comes to making sure that there is some level of stabilization in terms of our excess and deficiency. And I think the last point was just, I know when we voted to take the funds out of E&D to support the budget, I think both you and Jeff had to do some pretty healthy guesswork in terms of trying to help us understand what we could potentially take out and kind of maintain. So to come within $4,000, that's pretty good. So I think you both did a good job of that, so thank you.
Well, thank you, and maybe to add a little more perspective to that, in 2015, the E&D balance here was $1.4 million. In 2016, it was $1.3 million. In 2017, it was $1.2 million. And in 2020, it was $605,000. So there has been a slow erosion of E&D balance for lots of good and valid reasons. But I think we've all agree we've probably come to the end of the road and looking at that as a solution to budget deficits.
And I just mentioned that the 5% that you mentioned, Chris, that's a recommendation by DESI, I believe, is that right?
I think that's the maximum.
Yeah, if I could, 5% is the total amount that is the maximum amount that a school district is allowed to have in E&D by the state,
Yep.
and actually by state law.
Okay.
DESI does not make a recommendation to the best of my knowledge and belief. Having said that, I think that sort of best practice is in some places to try to get to 5% and build up to that number, knowing that you might have a capital project coming about or some one-time expenditures, certainly not anything that's on a recurring basis. And in fact, I have seen a number of districts that talk about it will be no less than 2%, it'll be no greater than 3.5%, and then in cases where we're trying to build up something for an upcoming project, you may build up something on top of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Dawn?
Chair?
1 second, Fred. Dawn?
Okay, thank you. Several months ago, the committee and Jeff received a letter regarding our bond rating, too, for the district, and that indicated that our bond rating went down. And it's my understanding that may be related to the, having less E&D as reserves?
Well, so back up for a second. And part of a standard review that Standard & Poor's does of outstanding credits, and we still have several $1 million worth of debt outstanding on this building that we're in right now, in the high school building. They review credits. And yes, we were downgraded based upon a number of things. Some of it was things beyond our control. The general state of the economy, our dependence on state aid, the fact that Massachusetts at that point in time did not have a budget. That didn't help. But it also was mentioned prominently that we had fund balances that had been decreasing over time, and we were showing a greater reliance on fund balance as a way of funding our operating budget. So it wasn't the only issue, but it certainly was prominent in their concerns.
Thank you. Fred?
John, do you happen to know off the top of your head what our OPEB liability is at right now?
I don't.
And should we develop a plan in conjunction with E&D to be funding that?
Well, the district has a separate OPEB account, and those people who manage those funds, as part of a Plymouth County program, have come and visited with the committee, I think, every February for quite some time. Certainly the February I was here, they did. The committee had made a number of deposits in relatively modest amounts, but nonetheless a start, for several years. And then for these last few years, they had not been contributing to that OPEB fund. And that was really, I think, a function of the budget issues that we had here, and the fact that we were also seeing increases in our Plymouth County retirement liability.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Chair.
Go on. Yep.
One more question.
Sure.
If we're referring to the year-end report, I noticed a couple line items in regards to general supplies, Jeff, at the middle school specifically, in library instructional materials, and it's just sort of an overall question. It totals with both middle schools about $10,000. And I've had a parent, and I know as a parent of past middle school students, my real concern is reading books, essentially getting books in students' hands. COVID right now is a different story because we're utilizing some audiobooks, I understand, and maybe sharing books or so forth. So my real question is, are we utilizing the supply budget line appropriately to, get books in students' hands so they can read? We talk about screen time too. Are audiobooks the best when they're already doing screen time? Sometimes kids like to curl up on a couch and just read. It's been presented that if parents can go out and buy the book, that would be helpful. If you need one, we can provide one as a district. So the district is offering that still. So that's something I noticed and something I've heard from parents about, the availability, that we're just not having enough of the, simple chapter books, The Outsiders, or other middle school level books.
Where are those line items on?
Oh,
What
sure.
page are they on?
Sure.
Do these have page numbers?
I think is the top right the page number 4?
Oh.
Okay, so page 4, HMS, about the 6th one down, Gen Supplies. And I'm looking at available budget 2,000. And then several lines down further, HMS Library Instructional Materials. Again, I don't know if this is what we would use for additional reading books, 1,000 available there.
I think library books would be books that the students would take out of the library, as opposed to student books that the kids are getting from their ELA teachers. I would think those would be two different line items, but I don't know.
Instructional supplies are different line items than
Right.
library supplies.
Yeah.
Correct. Each library has a supply budget to recirculate. As you know, we really only have 2 librarians in the district. The high school had a full librarian who's now out for COVID and working with elementary students. And Hanson's librarian/librarian actually teaches a full load of classes. So in district, we have para support in our libraries outside of the high school, and I think that would be ideal. But if we dig into, when we present our budget again in February, if you look at what we provide for instructional supplies district-wide, we're poor. I mean, not poor financially, we don't provide anything in instructional materials. George, as the middle school principal, myself as the high school principal, that line item hasn't shifted since 2010. So I think we can look at how we want to provide or utilize the money and the resources we get from the communities to provide instructional materials. And I agree with you, Don. The reading books are great for kids. And then this year, and I'm already jumping forward, we're going to be looking at devices as well. So I think we can look at those line items and look at how we appropriate them and how the principals actually spend that money for the circulation, for the publications in the library. I know in our classrooms right now, we are short of books to hand out to kids in all the districts. And our teachers have been outstanding in recycling and collecting donations so that we can put books in kids' hands. That's what happens when we're in the bottom third of the state.
And books cost a lot of money also, like a set of permabound books to give, like a class set of The Outsiders. Like those cost a lot more money than you actually think. Like in my district at the end of the year, we're always short. You just lose books. Like kids don't like Chromebooks. Like if the Chromebooks didn't come back from March, like textbooks and literature books didn't come back too, I'm sure. And they cost more money, I think, than we think. But the other thing too, I don't know, Jeff, in the district, can kids take a book out of the library and do like the 72-hour like drop back in?
So George is going to jump in on that.
So what's happened to the libraries? What we've done is we've shrunk, as budgets shrink and we've lost people in the libraries. What we tried to hold on, and there's two different things we're talking about, but if you're talking about increasing the circulation and getting books in the hands of students, we always tried to make sure that whether it was the paraprofessional or the remaining librarians, we at least did what was called like the Book of the Month Club. It was something you pay about $2,000 for. We always did it, usually, sometimes didn't come out of the library line, but it was, you would receive 20 books a month over 12 months, so at least you'd get 244 new books of high interest, Caldecott winners, Newbery winners, into your library. We still try to do that in our libraries. Not necessarily this year because it's so different, but that's what we do. When it comes back to the classroom set, I know what you're saying, being a former middle school principal, that the amount of money you would pay for the one classroom set would be astronomical when you think about what you could get that book for on Amazon, let's say. So you could get the paperback of, I don't know, Ivan the Great or the Mighty Ivan or whatever book, and then you might get it $5.99 on Amazon, but when you get it permabound, and permabound is basically, if you can think back, it's sort of like taking a paperback and almost making it like a textbook. You know, it's like that hard plastic. It fixes the binding a little bit, and so you can keep it for years. When those things happen, it's astronomical, so we've always tried to pair share and do books. I think at the highlight, when we had a lot of money at the time coming in, we would get the double class sets per grade, so that teacher A would have the class set and teacher B would also have a class set, so the whole, let's say, 8th grade reads it at the same time, and then those books go away and they go on to the next one. But I do agree that instructional supplies and library materials is something we really need to look at as we move forward. Like Jeff said, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the initiatives we have as we go forward to equal the playing field. It's a technology component, but there are things out there now from our new reading program at the elementary school, and then also what's called EPIC, which is an online library for kids, that hopefully can address that to make sure we're a little more equitable in the future.
Thank you. I think if we can get what that actual cost is for the permabound sets, it would be nice for the committee to understand how much it really would be to put a book in every 8th grader's hand, or 7th grader.
So if I remember correctly, you're looking at like $1,300 for a class set for permabound,
Okay.
and that's for a novel. That's not for a textbook. That's not for a basal reader. That's not for a program at the middle school, and it's something that always, sadly, ends up on the floor of the budget cut, because then you have teachers who do the right thing and work hard and go above and beyond, and they might get their scholastic points if they order books with kids and they use their own points to get some books. We go with like our program with the public libraries where they'll get sets. But no, you raise an excellent point.
Okay. I'm just looking also on page 3 is the Whitman Middle School, in that general supply line is very minimal. It's $8,000 for the entire school. So
You are
just
correct, and
referenced-
everything comes out of that. Your pencils, your pens, your planners, your everything that you need from a non-educational standpoint, so much so that it also becomes the consumables that your science department needs. So that's why pre-COVID you have dances, that's why you have fundraisers, that's why you have all of those things, because in the mind of a principal, they're saying, you guys do what you need to do, but I still have to make sure I can run my building, so you look for ancillary methods to do it. Now, that's just the state we've been in since I've been here, since 2004, and hopefully we're on a path, now that we have such a modest gains, that we can start to get...
3 sets of books.
That we can start to get on a point, though, that those are the discussions that we start having, and those are the planning that we start having, so we can actually make sure we have a level playing field for all students. So I agree with you, Don.
Right. Thank you. And I appreciate that these balance of available funds have gone into E&D. It's not like the money just disappears and goes by the wayside. But if there is an available budget, I would like to see that it's used. We've budgeted for supplies, so I see an availability there left over at those schools. So thank you for sharing.
Okay, any other discussion? Anything else, John? No?
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank
you.
We need to vote. I think.
You need to vote on that, right? You need to vote, John, correct?
So, I think, Michelle, could you clarify what we just took the vote on? Because I may have misspoke. I may have said the budget and not the line item transfer.
Mr. Howard motioned, Mr. Ford seconded to approve the 2020 final transfers.
Final transfers.
Okay, so now we're going to vote on the
Do we need to vote on the closed session?
You're good.
We're all set?
We're all good.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, Superintendent.
Thanks, Chris. So, on your table, I gave you a self-assessment that I'd like you to review over the next couple weeks and provide feedback. This showed what I feel we did as a district, what I did as a superintendent in some abbreviated term from September of 19 through September of 20. From this document, though, I've asked you, or as I asked you a couple weeks ago, I need your help as I prepare my goals. Superintendent goals, usually superintendents have 4 goals, sometimes 6. 2 goals being a professional goal for myself, professional improvement, and then a student learning goal. The other 2 goals are district-oriented. And what I asked you to do for homework, and this is the first time I think this committee is going to discuss what you see the needs of the district are. I asked you to come up with some district goals. And I also preface that to not really think about it in terms of budget or finances. What this committee, what you as individual school committee members would like to see me look at this year in those 2 district goals. So I kind of open it up to members of the committee who would like to volunteer. I feel like I'm the teacher in class. Who's going to raise their hand first? But who would like to share? And Michelle's going to be taking some notes, and I'm going to take all of this information, and we don't have to vote on it. This isn't a votable, this is a discussion item, and I'd like to just really hear what you think, so then I can structure my goals with George. We can talk about it internally and say, these are two of the top priorities, and these are other things that we could potentially work on as a district. I have some things in the back of my mind already that I'm seeing as we opened up in September, what we look at as the district. We have some things on the table already that we need to work on as a district, but I really want to hear from the committee as to what you see specifically for 2021 you would like me to put on as a district goal and for me to work on this year. So I open it up to members of the committee to share.
Did you say you wanted us to look at this for the next?
Yeah, for the next meeting. The self-assessment, it's 5 pages long, so I kind of want you to read it for the next meeting and give me feedback if you see some or question that. I didn't want to take committee's time tonight and read it through. But I'm really looking for discussion now on what you want me to focus on district-wide, what we can work as a leadership team to work on district-wide, and really kind of take off the, oh my goodness, it's going to cost too much money. Throw it out there. And then we can see, as we formulate the budget, those costs and maybe put it in a 2 or 3 year plan, but specifically what you would like to see representing your community, our district as a whole, for me to put down and drive us forward this year. Mr. Boyce, welcome. Mr. Chair.
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Boyce.
I just heard Don. I don't mind going after, but...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. Thank you. Jeff, one of the things I thought was remarkable was the idea when, and I know it had to do with space and so forth, but bringing the preschoolers up here and having that sort of integration. And when I ran for re-election in the spring, I mentioned that as one of my things. I thought, why can't we collaborate more across grades? And I don't know how that would look or what that would be like or how that, I mean, I almost consider it like, maybe in a way it's kind of a strategic thing or it's one of our, engagement things. Or, I don't know, but I mean, it just seemed to be ideal. And I know this wasn't this past year wasn't the year to say, hey, will you take us on a trip through there? Because, once, as you mentioned, March 13th hit, it was a whole different game. But a couple things, and I think it probably is brought out because of the COVID world, is that and more doing things outdoors. I mean, we sent our kids in. I remember being at the Indian Head School and spending time in the town forest across the way. Yeah, maybe there's a lot of liabilities, but start somewhere else. I keep saying build a solar system in the hallways of the schools and give students the idea of like, yeah, that is quite a ways away. Use that backfield and behind Indian Head. I know these sound like more like other type of ideas and not specifically yours or whatever, but just a couple of things if they can be grown off of or whatever. And I'm not trying to mess up our whole school system and say, hey, Steve, we just straightened out all the schools. You know, we can't now put sixth graders back into Conley or anything like that. It's not so much like that, but just the idea and trying to still foster with that.
We might have a Vanna White up there right now, so when you shout out your things, George might be writing them down.
It's a big source of, one of my goals, to listen to the superintendent, because he didn't want me, I didn't really want to do this today. I'm doing it now. So I have collaboration across grade levels, outdoor educational opportunities.
Can I mention a third one?
I think you can do whatever you like.
Okay, thank you.
I asked for 2 to 4, Mr. Boyce, so you
Okay,
still got
well,
some
all right, we'll
wiggle
go
room.
with 3. 3's a nice number. The mass conferences, and I know this year it's a whole different beast. It's not happening in November or whatever. At least the executive meetings happening. Mass and mask. One of the years I went, with Dr. Whitman was here, and we were sitting down, and we listened to, I forget the gentleman's name, but they talked about how global learning. You're a student, you sit in front of a computer, and, you know, you're listening to a classroom in Japan, or you're listening to a classroom and before we had the China, I want to say exchange teachers here, you know, we've had a lot of different programs. We just delved in an emergency way in telling our kids, you're going to have to learn online for a little while until we get all this sorted out. Why not almost continue like that? I know everyone wants to get back in the schools all together, and that would be ideal. But I still think there's a tangible there that can come off of, why can't we keep that not, even if it's not global, even if it's local, or even within us, I mean, it could be something. And I tell you all about the presidential libraries until I'm blue in the face probably, and you don't want to listen to me after a while, but I use that as an example because it's a system that isn't often understood, and once you put it out there and say, you could go to all of these, take your passport book and move on, and that's just an example of something like that, but that would be my third one, and I saw that as a good opportunity.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Chair?
I got Dawn first, Fred, then I'll go to you.
I would say full-day kindergarten, universal kindergarten for incoming students. I looked at our reopening plan, and should the governor close us down, our school hours for high school kids start at 9 a.m. So my second would be healthy start times for all students, to look at that. We appreciate John Tuffy's work, but I don't know that he's on board for a third semester. So I don't know if that falls under district goals, but certainly some focus on, you know, full-time replacement in that position is real important.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Replacing John
Yeah,
Replacing John.
in about 4 years.
yeah. So that's kind of my side note. And certainly maintaining a technology plan and replacement plan yearly to replenish devices.
All set, Dawn?
Yes.
Okay. Fred?
Okay, and I'll leave this to administration to, when you have a list to prioritize. Practical use in the high school for business or DECA classes. Let's send kids out to, you know, be able to sell advertising and learn how to, you know, operate, quote unquote, in the real world. I think that some of life's lessons could be incredible lessons. One-to-one devices, I know that was just mentioned. Foreign languages, but not to bring them back for the middle school, but to start them in elementary and really foster the proper education, because it is a global economy. Chapter 74 programs that perhaps are not taught at VOTEC. I know, Jeff, you had discussion about nurses at one point, or a nursing program, different advantages that we can take there that could help us both budgetarily as well as being able to expand our offerings, so to speak. And I believe that's my 4.
Thanks, Fred. Hillary?
I guess this is one, but I would like to see a plan, or I don't know if there's a plan, can you hear me? For like diversity, equity, inclusion training, like social justice training for staff, for students.
Yep.
That's a big, and not even like including it in the curriculum, from, I know that my children are in 1st and 2nd grade, and a lot of things they're doing is being kind, and what do you do at the playground to be kind? The high school level, what are the kids learning? What are they reading? Are they reading books by old white men who are dead? Are they reading more contemporary things? Getting that in, and that's going to take a lot of work on the curriculum side, and it's not going to be done in 2 months, but at least starting to think about it. And I see things on Twitter that educators in the district are already doing along those lines, but to have something a little more formal. Training for teachers too, myself, like to have those conversations in a classroom, that's a hard thing to do,
Go ahead, Vanna.
George?
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So I'm glad you brought that up, like we talked. One of the things we're looking at is we're in our 4th year now, formal 4th year of the Excel Coalition. So the Excel Network is something that Whitman Hanson's been a part of, and that stands for Excellence in Social Emotional Learning. It's through the Rennie Center. It's also through Transforming Ed. We're one of 22 districts in the state that are still with it in its 4th year. And this whole year, so what we've done internally in a quick snapshot is what we've done in the district is take the CASEL. CASEL is the Center for Advancement of Social Emotional Learning. It's out of California, but they produce pieces that students need, that adults need to have healthy, proper life. Self-awareness, self-responsibility, resiliency, all of these pieces. And we've worked on that in this district, K-12, for the past 3 years. So now in the 4th year, the theme of this is transformative SEL. So transformative SEL is taking those topics like shared responsibility, like self-awareness, like self-management, and saying, how do we identify, how do we do this as a culture and a system to not only let people have an identity, let people belong, but also let people have a sense of agency. And what does agency mean? It means that they have a sense to say, we need to critically look at what we read. We need to critically look at what we teach. We need to look at the system itself so we can end up at a place of justice. So justice is after equity, after equality, it gets to justice. And that's when the system will change so that everyone themselves can have an equal part and can all prosper. Now that goes along with not only what's happening in society, but it goes along with the meat and potatoes of what's happening now in our district from a standpoint of our socioeconomic groups, from our English language learner groups, from our groups that are underrepresented. And there's things in our plan that you'll see that specifically address these, but then it also gets to the bigger picture of what's happening in society, what do we read, what are we reading, what voice do we give to our students, what voice do we give to our staff. So that's a big piece of what it is that is going to be in our strategic plan that you'll see, and it's going to be one of the themes that we have this year with our Excel Network. The Excel Network we have in the district is 11 individuals from every school and from multiple levels within schools. So it goes from a nurse, it goes from a principal, it goes from classroom teachers, middle school teachers, elementary teachers, high school folks. So we're really trying to look at it from the whole system of what we do here so that we can not only produce better for the system of education in Whitman Hanson, but so that we can produce better for the society that we all live in. That's how.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? David?
I just have a list right here. Most of my papers are on community engagement, but I'll just read off a couple. Enrollment, hold harmless, mental health, addressing education equity.
Hold on one second. Let,
Sorry, George.
You might want to just give me a paper.
Yeah, enrollment.
So can I ask
Like,
a
for example, like John was saying, full day K, and like Fred was saying, add, something to compete with VOTEC and their program.
So David, just to clarify enrollment, I'm not sure what,
Well, we're in hold harmless right now. So in order to get a hold harmless, one of the things we're going to need to do is work on enrollment, and we're going to need to get more people in the district. So I say we
Okay.
should orient our goals around that and getting out a hold harmless, especially with Chapter 70 reforms after the Student Opportunity Act. So then mental health, education, equity.
Hold on one second, David.
No,
Mental
I know.
health, yeah.
We already mentioned tech, but special education improvements. Public transparency, which would tie in with community engagement. And to make sure we're creating student-first oriented policies. And then my last one. Was just saying that as a committee, we should be working on robust community engaged initiatives. That way we're out in the community, people are are aware of what's going on. There isn't any narratives going out about, the school's trying to do this and that. Everyone knows what's being said. It's transparent, it's honest, it's coming directly from the source, it's coming from us. And there isn't people on I don't know, Whitman Pride or something saying this or that. We have the opportunity to get to our community before someone else kind of intercepts, if that makes any sense. But oh, yeah, robust community engaged initiatives. And that's what I have for the plan.
That's all, that's it, Dave?
Oh yeah, that's it for strategic. I'll talk more for community.
Okay. Chris?
So just two high level, I think we've already covered some of it, but one really around whatever we decide with community engagement.
Okay.
And I think that's more defined as making sure the community understands the what, why, how. So a little bit more richer in terms of, there's a lot of great things that happen throughout the district, but understand the why. Why are we doing some of the things that we do? Because I think that really helps bridge everything that follows. And then a little bit, I guess a continuation of kind of where Steve was going. I think with everything that's happened in terms of the pandemic and how it's changed things, I almost want to suggest that you guys kind of come up with your own BHAG or really big, crazy goal in terms of what does the delivery of education look like in 20 years? So that we can kind of work towards that, right? Because if you look at education and post-World War II, kind of what's happened, yeah, you had computers and internet, but the delivery has still kind of been kind of a consistent push. So I think there's really an opportunity, like Steve said, with some of the things that have transpired, even with some of the stuff that Fred's talking about, like how can we be different? Not to be better or, hey, we're better. No. If we're really thinking about the future of education, why wait for something fundamental to shift? Why not start to think about what that looks like? And then if we kind of have a little bit of a vision, the steps that we're taking today can kind of align to that. So it's more of the goal would be to develop what that big future of education looks like for this district. I understand, and I deal with this all the time, so I understand and appreciate you'll have to deal with there's certain regulations that need to be followed, there's certain things that need to be done. This is how it was always done. But I think this is the time to really think about the future in terms of, how can we be a little bit different, innovative in terms of that delivery. So.
Mike?
Yes, most of mine were already touched upon through other people, but the one I do have is, can we work on a facilities plan worked on 100% transparency with our boards of selectmen and finance committee and keep it up to date? That's it.
Okay, and George, I just want to know if I can buy a vowel.
Yeah, there you go.
No, on a serious note, my biggest issue, even before I decided to run for school committee, was the culture, right? So much, and I see it, Jeff, you have it in here, professional culture and different aspects of culture. But I just think it's imperative for at any level to, at any interface between the school district and the community to, just basically be kind and empathetic and inclusive. It all kind of ties together to not only getting more people involved and more support, but creating the best environment to educate children, right? Whether it's, on the sports field or, when you walk in the building or, anything really. I think to be more mindful of, the fact that we're here to provide a service to our community, right? And that's what's most important to me, I think.
Dan, you got it?
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, Dan.
Most of them have been touched already. The only thing I think I could add, most of the people already said it, is engagement with it's kind of hard to do right now with COVID, but have like maybe town hall sessions where you can be out there with a couple of us there. And if people, because we're always like, I guess we're educating people constantly. Like I think Chris was pointing that out. We're not getting some of that information out there, and we got to pound that back. The biggest thing I think we have to do is transparency. In every level, we have to get that out there better. And to touch on what Chris was just saying, equity across the line for all these grades. There's certain things that aren't done. It's always, we have to be very, very consistent with this. We're not good at that. Nothing else that everybody else has already brought up, but I just thought maybe it's a bad time to try to do a town hall with the COVID, but eventually get something like that kicked in. And I do like what Mike was saying about the facilities also.
So I love the list. So nothing on that list hasn't been talked about in my office between George and myself. And if this committee is allowing us to just, think outside the box, we've already have some, to go to your plan, what education looks like in 10 years. We have a new middle school project coming up. We're already thinking post-middle school, how can we transform this district into a unique district? So giving us this opportunity to look at, and when I say us, because I feel my goals will trickle out to everybody in the district. If this committee has us focus in on some of those things, and Hillary, yours is already in goal number 2 for me for professional practice. I think that's imperative this year especially. Looking at these district goals, these are all something we can collaborate on. And when I say district-wide, we'll put these in, but I'm going to need your help as a committee to be united in these. And if we move into that one-to-one initiative with a full tech, looking at infrastructure and tech, one-to-one, what does that mean? It's not just a device in somebody's hand. We have to look at how we're going to educate the students using that device and train the teachers. So when I'm asking for money in the budget, we will talk as a committee about the whys of needing that, and I need this committee to spread out and send that message out. It's not just a device. The students are going to have to learn how to use that device, and the teachers are going to have to modify their lessons to that device, which costs a little bit more, a little less, or whatever, as we tend to move forward. So all of the things that you've shared with us are things that we've talked about, and I'm really glad we're all on the same page. Nothing was way outside that I'm thinking, or George is thinking, or this committee is thinking. These are things that I think are attainable, that I can put in as goals, and we can benchmark it, and you can measure them as we go along. So thank you for sharing this list. I will look at the two goals from the district. We might add a third, because I did the MSBA project for us in that middle school is going to be a district thing that I'm going to need your assistance on as well. As we're looking at the feasibility study, talking about what we want in a new building, that will be a goal of mine, whether it's a formal goal or it's an informal goal. That's something that I want to make sure that we see through and get that new middle school project going. So thank you for this. Is there any other comment on the district goal piece?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Small.
If I could add one thing, and that is if we can come up with a way, whether it's by going through the PACs and holding separate smaller meetings or having larger meetings, but getting community involvement in what they're looking for in the district and what they're looking for their kids to be taught, I think would be imperative.
Okay. I mean, I get I'll be very honest, I get nervous when I ask the community what we're going to teach students. I think we have standards and we have a state curriculum that we follow, and different people in different areas might have different ways they want their students taught. I do appreciate, though, soliciting community input on what they want to see and how the district moves. So I hear that, and we'll see what we can do. And then when we talk about engagement, I think that's another area that we can focus in on, and looking at a town hall or how we can engage the community in a way so that their voice can be heard and how they want to see this district moving forward in the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Oh, Dawn?
Just wanted to add 2 comments as a follow-up to 2 of these items. As Hillary mentioned, diversity, equity, and inclusion. A year ago, I attended the MASC conference, and there was a seminar on this. And I felt like at the time, these can somewhat be buzzwords that people don't, and they hear it, and the explanation that really hit home with me and resonated, an analogy, if you will. Diversity, it was explained to me as similar to if you have a party and you invite everyone. So that's diversity. Equity is everyone who comes to the party gets to add to the playlist of the music, their own.
That's tough.
And inclusion, equity, inclusion is actually having everyone on the dance floor together. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was just, I just wanted to expand on that. To me, that was really interesting. And second, Mr. Small mentioned Chapter 74, and how we could maybe begin to talk about adding programs, and he said nursing. My daughter at the high school was invited to a new club, which is a pre-med club at the high school. So there are people interested in medicine and science right here in our building. Superintendent, would you be able to explain a little bit on Chapter 74 and what we could do and can't do as that relates to South Shore VOTEC?
So I can't go deep into that because I don't know exactly the rules around what we can take from VOTEC. I know we can look at different types of programs within the district and apply for Chapter 74 aid. One of those areas we were looking at was potentially culinary, right, and moving that forward. But Fred and I spoke a couple years back about bringing in more of an online resource around vet tech, x-ray technician, things like that, where students can actually attain a certification and walk out of here and either be certified or go or have a year of Massasoit knocked off their belt. So those are programs that I can look at to bring in. Right. And I know I don't know if it's competitive against VOTEC. And John, I don't know if you know more about Chapter 74 than I do, but that's not something I'm well versed at, so I don't want to misspeak, and we can look at that for another meeting. I don't know if you know anything about Chapter 74 and what we can do and what we can't do as a regional school district. Not to put you on the spot, but I will.
So I think everybody, there we go. I think everybody knows, I previously was in Silver Lake Regional School District. And Silver Lake is a comprehensive high school, which means that we have the regular academic program that you have here, but we also had, I think it was 6, but it would take me a minute to go around the room and count the different shops that were Chapter 74 programs. Chapter 74 is just different funding formula than Chapter 70, which is what we get here. And it is very specific about supervision and the resources that you have to have. Now, you're a member of South Shore VOTEC, but as far as I remember, there's nothing that would preclude you from being in competition with them, although that's sort of an expensive way to move forward. So you'd be looking for programs that aren't readily available there. They are expensive to run because they are They require a lot of equipment that is not inexpensive and a lot of supervision in some programs that might have a risk that it's involved with them. But it often appeals to a different group of students, students who are somewhat more focused perhaps than the student that's looking forward to a college experience in liberal arts, and at that point they're looking to make a decision as to what direction their life will take. It's often somebody who maybe has more of a goal of graduating high school and going into the workforce. Although the numbers more or less say that about 2/3 of all students, and I don't believe it's changed, about 2/3 of all students who leave a vocational high school go on to additional training. Now that may be a 4-year school like a Wentworth or UMass for horticulture. It may be a 2-year program for an associate's degree that puts them on a path to a 4-year degree, or just a 2-year program that gives them additional skills or certifications in various areas. But it is a commitment the district would have to make, and Chapter 70, so the vocational education program at DESE is separate group, and we really would start with talking with them about what it would require.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Just to add to that, is there anything at the high school, like a senior project or an internship program for seniors that they can go out and shadow a veterinarian, for example, or is there a program currently at the high school like that?
We've had that in the past. I don't know what the status is the past year, but we've had that in the past. It was a school to work program, then it was an internship program. The challenge we had there is not necessarily the ability of students wanting to go out, were the people coming in.
Right.
So we have worked with the local town. We just didn't want people traveling too far away.
Yep.
But that's something we've looked at. We've also looked at, other opportunities for kids to leave the building and get hands-on experience in the career field that they're looking for.
George?
Yep.
Just before we moved off this topic, I just think I wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about curriculum and education as a goal this year. And I know one of the things that we started this week and will be in the next 2 weeks is that students will now, for this year, for really the first formalized time, will have K-8 interim assessments in ELA and math. At the elementary school, we're using Interreading, which is our new program that was purchased just this year, and in our second year of iReady. At the middle school, we've expanded our offerings with what's called IXL, which is an online platform for reading and math, and that'll go up through the 8th grade. Our goal is to do it 3 times this year so that we can really say, okay, where are we at from where we were now at the beginning? Where are we at a midpoint range? And then where did we end up with? And this is a pretty big movement in our district because we're finally centralizing our curriculum at the lower levels, thanks to the work that the towns and yourselves have done with our new programs. And then it's also tracking, or it's also allowing us to expand into the middle school with some of the new online components. What Chris said, this pandemic has now sort of changed how we do things. And how we do things from a technological standpoint to assess where kids are at is some of the new things we're doing now in K-8. In 6 to 8. So I just want to let everybody understand that we're doing interim assessments that'll help say where are students at in their growth, and then a path will be developed so that they can continue to reinforce those skills while still learning the curriculum that they're at. So that is something that is going to be part of our plan. It's also part of our plan to then address those subgroups that may not have achieved as much as they have, or that they may need more support. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that we still have the educational component that we're pursuing, and that's one of the main things we're going to be doing this year with that.
Can I ask a question? How often are the curriculums revised? Like, do teachers get together every summer and kind of look at, this is what our plan was, this is what our map was, but we didn't actually get to this, or
so curriculum planning takes place at the K-8 level now. It's in his second year with lead teachers. So we have a elementary curriculum director, and that is the work of lead teachers who are per grade, per school, per discipline, per grade, per school, K-5, then per school, per discipline at 6, 7, and 8, And then at the high school, we have curriculum coordinators. Curriculum coordinators also have a 6 to 8 piece as an overall SEER. But their responsibility is to say, where are we at? Most of that work has always traditionally been in the summer. That didn't necessarily get done this summer because of the state we were in. However, they've already started. We have all of our teacher leaders chosen. They've already had their first meetings. And then that trickles out into the individual grade levels in schools with their professional learning communities. So this year especially, that's where we're at. So what we started with this year, with the result of what I just said, is now we have the ability to say, where are the children at? So now we can assess where they're at compared to where they should be at their grade level, see if there's deficits or if there's gaps, and then some of the programs we have now in ELA and math, then adjust and give them a learning path, so hopefully there's remediation. So the human aspect is to fix the curriculum itself. The technological aspect, in a way, is what is going to help define the path that the student needs to move forward.
Thanks, George.
Any other questions on, or comment on the goals piece? Thank you. Do you mind if we go out of order and get Bob Rogers?
Not at all, no. So we will take Bob Rogers. Let me see now. A proposal from Athletic Director Bob Rogers regarding student athletic transportation waivers and an amendment to the athletic user fee policy during COVID-19.
All right, good evening, everybody. So the first thing I have for you is an athletic transportation change to what the current school policy is regarding students riding the school bus. So we'll give the parents an opportunity. This was reviewed by our school attorney to make sure it was legal. It gives parents the option to allow their child to be driven by another parent, for the child to drive on their own if they have their license, and for the child to drive with another student who meets the standard by the law. You know, they have to have their license for 6 months before they can drive another student. So parents are given the option to sign 1, 2, 3, or none of those. The reason for this, a few reasons. The first one is some parents still are not comfortable with their children riding on a bus. The second thing is transportation is kind of at a premium right now. We have limited resources per student, although I will say it's been much better than I thought it was going to be in terms of them meeting our needs, in part because the other school that uses the same office as us, Abington, they don't have as many offerings as we do. But we also are going to be in a financial crunch in the athletic department. We're not going to have any gate receipts. So where we can save money, it does help. I have made it clear to the coaches to make sure the kids know that, you know, if they want a seat on the bus, we will do everything possible to give them a seat on the bus. This should be if they don't want to take the bus. And that's where we've kind of stressed that with the kids and the family so far. So I would just ask the committee to go ahead and approve this. And again, this has been reviewed by school council.
Motion to approve
Second.
transportation.
That was from Don, had the motion, and David had the second. Any discussion?
The motion is to approve the waiver as presented?
Correct. No discussion? We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Mr. Cullity?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Sniffen?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Ms. Byers?
Yes.
Mr. Forth?
Yes.
And Mr. Scriven, yes.
Thank you. The second item you have in your packet is regard to user fees. Knock on wood, I hope this doesn't become something that we're going to have to deal with, but just trying to be proactive that if we should face a shutdown, so that everybody goes into this with their eyes open in terms of what we would give for refunds. After I met with this committee last time and we discussed it briefly and listening to some of the feedback that some of you had, and then I met with Dr. Jones again, we actually revised this just a little bit to be a little bit more in favor of the families. We're doing 2-week increments instead of what we had before was 4. So you can see we basically have a 20% assessment for each 2-week increment. So if we were to get shut down, you can see it in your packet. It goes from 80, 60, 40, and 20, depending upon where that shutdown happens. Knock on wood, it's not going to happen, but just in case it does, I do want people to go into it with their eyes open in terms of when they pay their user fee, they know what it is.
Thanks, Bob. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the amendment of the athletic user fee policy as presented.
So moved.
David?
Second.
and Dan second. Roll call vote? Oh,
Mr. Chair?
go ahead, Fred, yep.
Do we need to place the actual policy number on here? I know we have a policy for athletic fees. Do we need to place that exact number on here so that's exactly what we're approving?
Fred, I don't believe, I could be wrong. I don't believe there's actually a written policy. I don't think, Jeff, you might.
I don't think there's a policy, it's a protocol, it's something the committee assesses.
Something that says already in the student handbook, it does say in the student handbook that once the user fee is paid, it's non-refundable for any reason, like if a student leaves, they decide to quit the team, they get kicked off the team for disciplinary reasons, the user fee is always non-refundable. I kind of put this in kind of as in good faith because, you know, it's to nobody's fault if, you know, we get shut down. So I don't think there's a policy number, but I could be wrong. Michelle just looked it up and she said she doesn't
The
think
benefit
so.
of being here, I'm just pulling up file KF-R, but that's more of the building use than the athletic fees. I thought we did have an athletic fee policy, but I could be mistaken, I guess.
I think it's the difference, I think it's probably semantics, the difference between the policy and having it written in the handbook. So in a sense, it's written in the handbook, and then that gets approved by the school committee every year. So I think that's where it gets adjusted when we do adjust it.
So we're amending the handbook with this.
This is just an addendum to the current user fee protocol that we use.
And I think it's imperative because in it, it's non-refundable. It's cut and dry. We've never experienced this before. And what we talked about is we don't think it's relatively fair and equitable if the season shuts down tomorrow and I've paid $250.
I'm in total agreement
Yeah.
with this. I'm just, my concern is that we have it in the right place so someone can't say that they weren't aware of it.
Understood. I think we just...
The other thing I should say is it's been communicated to all of the families that are currently participating as they participate. I did put in there, just so I wasn't presumptuous, I said this needed school committee approval on the handout that you have that they received. I gave that to all the families already, and it does say that it needed your approval for it to be ratified. If you didn't approve it, then actually it would be that they wouldn't get any refund.
You default back to the handbook,
Yeah.
so...
Yeah.
Dawn?
I was just going to add, maybe we're looking to just add this as an amendment to the non-refundable language temporarily for this year.
Yes.
Maybe this is a one-year non-refundable policy. We are, I'm
just
sorry,
say as long as we're in-
I take that back policy, but
Yeah, I would say as long as we're in the COVID
yeah,
situation.
yeah.
Yep. Is that clear, Michelle? Okay.
Sure.
All right. So we'll take a roll call. Steve Boyce?
Yes.
Dan Cullity?
Yes.
Mike Jones?
Yes.
Chris Howard?
Yes.
Hillary Niffen?
Yes.
Fred Small?
Yes.
Don Byers?
Yes.
David Forth?
Yes.
And Chris Scriven, yes.
And then just the last thing, just for your own information, because you're probably getting phone calls or emails. My phone's been ringing off the hook and the emails, just regarding the attendance policy. Up until yesterday, we were restricted by the fact that we were in phase 3, step 1, in terms of the number of people that we could have at our facilities. So because of that, the Patriot League athletic directors voted to only allow home school parents attend the events with school-issued lanyards so we could identify who is at our facility. That's what we've done. It's been quite a project to do that, to get lanyards to everybody. We've done that. However, yesterday the governor did say on Monday we're going to move to step 2 of phase 3, which will increase those numbers. I have an athletic director meeting tomorrow, and what we're hoping to do is to adjust that in some way. I don't know what the vote will be, because there are some people that still would just prefer to keep it the way it is. Obviously, it's more manageable this way, but I'm of the mind that the experience that the kids have in athletics is a whole family experience. It's just as important for mom and dad and the grandparents to be able to go. So I'll be advocating at the meeting tomorrow to raise those numbers with a plan to be able to make sure that we can have social distancing. When we have our vote tomorrow, I will be putting it on social media, on our Twitter page and our athletic webpage as well. But that's where we are right now, and we're hoping that right now the Plymouth community above the athletic director, their superintendent has said nobody from another town. Hoping that if we all agree that's the way to go, and we can have like the visitors on the opposite side or in a completely different section, not interacting, that we can work together so that the season is really short this year. It's 11 games. So when you say you can only go to the home games, you're either talking 5 or 6 games. So to lose the away games, I think is, you know, we're going to advocate for it tomorrow, and I will report out how we made out.
Bob, just to clarify, so parents right now, as of today, only at home games, identified by a lanyard. So no students, just immediate family members. How many family members can go?
There's only 2 per student.
Okay.
There's 2 per student, and they get the lanyard, and it's sport specific and level specific. So for tomorrow, you don't want to be in my shoes tomorrow, because in my first attempt to try to make all this work, we have cross country home tomorrow, we have field hockey home tomorrow, and we have volleyball home tomorrow. So I will, at each one of those venues, they're all their own venue, will have those restrictions, and they'll all have their sport specifics as the level, the name of the sport, and they have certain areas that they can be. They got the lanyards with a letter explaining what they're supposed to do. They have to wear the mask. They have to stay socially distant.
Nice.
There have been some experience. There you go. Dawn has the lanyards right there. There have been, unfortunately, some examples elsewhere in the country of some really ugly interactions between athletic administrators and some community members that feel like it's their right. And the reality of it is we're charged to make sure that we're following state law. And so that's what we will do. And our community usually, you know, knock on wood, I've been here a long time, and people are very respectful. They may not like it. They'll tell me they don't like it, but they're usually very respectful. So I expect people to abide by it tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify. It's
Yep.
2 right now, and if with the AD's meeting, it could raise after Monday?
The motion that I'm making tomorrow is to make it so that every lanyard is worth 2 guests.
Okay.
So that way, not having to reissue more lanyards, we could just say that those families are able to get that, and then be able to create student lanyards, a certain amount for each game. To be able to do that, and then have the Whitman Hanson lanyard honored at an away game. So you could wear your Whitman Hanson lanyard to Duxbury or to Plymouth or whatever it is. But again, it's going to be it's a vote, and it was really close the last time we had the vote, so we'll see how it goes tomorrow.
One of the things I was just going to comment on that, kind of with Mr. Scriven said on culture, it was weird in the building the building's flat, and there's no Friday night lights, and hopefully, starting tomorrow, we might get a little bit more of student engagement, or if the opportunity comes that you can actually go see your friend's game, or even parents being able to see and participate, it can raise the culture right now, because we are experiencing real flat, especially in this building, because of the restrictions we've had to put into place to keep kids safe.
Yeah, obviously, Jeff, I'm biased, but I get to see other communities and other schools, and our culture at our school in terms of athletic, in terms of the kids supporting each other, going to other games. You see the attendance at our games compared to other schools, and it's much larger than other schools. And you know, we have a lot of things, a lot of fun things on Friday Night Lights. We have the couches, the Superfan couches. We give the Superfan cards. We have all kinds of specials for the kids to be involved in. Our captains go through leadership training so that they try to find ways to be more inclusive to the groups. So, but you're right. I mean, we definitely have a huge void right now, because it's, you know, the whole thing about if a tree falls in a forest, doesn't make a sound if nobody's there, right? And it's kind of like if the game happens and the stands aren't full, did the game really happen? And we're hoping that changes at some point.
Good.
Okay.
Did you want to ask, Chris? You were going to
Nope,
say something?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, I sent you a copy of the strategic plan that we worked on prior to February, prior to going out in COVID, and as a leadership team, we voted on this in June. What I'm bringing for the committee today is not necessarily to vote on the strategic plan, but for input from the committee, so that we can add things, run it by our leadership team. Our outcomes, we haven't been able to develop outcomes yet. We haven't really met and drilled down, but the hallmarks of success, George talked about Excel already, pre-K-12 system of teaching and learning, safe and secure environment, and then we added community engagement as a hallmark of success. These are things that I'd like the committee to look at. Again, visionary, looking 2 to 5, or a 3-year plan that we can have action steps. We know what we're working on, and over the course of the next 3 years, we can report out to the school committee. So I'm looking for input that we can add so that we actually approve the strategic plan at an upcoming meeting, and I can align my goals to this plan as well. So input, and I know a couple folks have already mentioned a few things that we put on the board, but other things pertinent to the strategic plan, whether it be in the mission, the vision, the core values, the theory of action, or the hallmarks of success, we're really open to hearing what say you.
Do you think it would be a good idea to have us go over this and then talk about it next meeting, or do you want to do it tonight?
I know we sent it out, but I'll take input. We can revisit it next meeting as well, but if people want to share right now, I'm willing to take that information now. We can share again a next meeting as well, but as we have it, if folks want to share, that's fine.
Mr. Chair, I'll go.
Thanks.
Mr. Small?
In looking at how do we actually engage the community, and I know you sent out a wonderful question here. The one thing I don't believe we utilize enough is the tax. You've got people working really hard, and they do a tremendous job of fundraising, but they also, meet on a regular basis and convey a message back to other parents. And I'm thinking that could be one way that we could perhaps hold smaller sessions, but to quote-unquote get the word out, so to speak. I don't know if I can keep going or we can stop.
Keep rolling, Fred. I think that's good.
It appears sometimes we have individuals doing their own thing on social media, and I believe a consistent message coming from the superintendent is a wonderful thing. Jeff, you're the face of the district, for good, bad, or indifferent. It's your face that they see. And that was a joke, by the way.
I'm laughing under my mask.
The video is a little bit behind, so it's sort of weird here watching it at the same time. But, I think that the communications coming from the superintendent's office, are a wonderful thing, and one strong, consistent message. Otherwise, too many chefs can mess up the soup, so to speak. I believe perhaps in structured time within our meetings, that we can have public forums, whether it be a Q&A and we, select, 5 random emails or messages that people have questions, just, have that. When the world changes back, perhaps we can get more into, the coffee hours and, hosting little things, such as that. The Express articles used to be a wonderful thing. I think that's another way to reach out for community involvement. Face-to-face conversations, I think, are a wonderful thing as well. Any comments or feedback?
Good. Good, Chris. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
So are we doing strategic plan feedback, or are we doing engagement?
Right now, we're strategic plan, but I think Fred jumped on
doing
engagement.
strategic plan
Okay,
feedback?
I jumped into the
Engagement.
as the portion of developed communication flow chart between, increase community relations.
Okay. I'm sorry, I skipped over David. David had a comment.
Oh, I was just going to add about the social media part. I actually attended a presentation by MASC, Tracy Novick, the field director, who also runs all of MASC social media. She did like an hour-and-a-half presentation, and she strongly encourages all individual school committee members to use social media, because that's the best way to reach out in the community, and that is what MASC has said. And I think it would be in our best interest for our school committee members to stay engaged and continue reaching out and making sure information's out there. And I agree with Fred that absolutely Jeff should be reaching out. I think Jeff's done a great job of communication. I know recently we got a bunch of emails last 2 weeks or so, and I think they've been really informative. But I also want to stress that it's our job as a committee to make sure to be on top of everything, to reach out to our constituents, and to utilize technology, which would be social media. And it's encouraged by MASC.
While I agree it's our job to reach out, to people, there are, very vastly different things that can occur by a simple post, and it, perhaps gets misinterpreted, etc. So I don't know, maybe we have a screening process that the superintendent's office looks at everything, and if people want to post things and whatnot. And I'm not saying to stimmy the message, but I'm just saying so it's a one consistent message, that's going out, because the most innocent thing can get people in trouble. And it's, we're all there to try and help, but some things can get lost in translation and whatnot.
Thanks, Fred. David?
I also want to reiterate that MASC did say that the administration can't oversee what we post and say this is okay, this isn't okay, because that is a violation of the First Amendment. So there's no overseeing either by the chair or the superintendent. That's not actually legal. So I just want to keep that in mind. And to my knowledge, nobody here has posted anything that's resulted in anyone getting in trouble individually. So.
No, but I think, can I just add to this? I just think that the MASC training that as a new member I also attended, the social media posting is informative and transparent and positive and unifying, and that's what we should be using our social media posting for, and I don't think we all are. And I agree with you, I don't think we should have to send everything to Jeff and George or Michelle and say read this and do this.
I don't want that.
However, right, you've got enough to do. The purpose of having a social media page is not to arouse suspicion amongst our communities. And that's what's been happening. And that's not engaging anybody. It's making them all want to turn away and not trust any of us. So if we're going to have presence on social media, it needs to be unifying, and it needs to be positive, and it needs to be factual. And if people have questions and further questions, people have come to me with complaints, and I've said, reach out to your building principal, reach out to the superintendent. I'm not qualified to field those questions about the budget numbers. I'm not John Tuffy. I think that we need to do a better job with our presence on social media as far as presenting the minutes from a meeting and the facts, and this is what they are, and we're all here for the same goal, and that's to give our kids a great education. That's what we're all here for, and that needs to come through. And I think all of these things that have been happening are not allowing that to come through. The first day of school, we didn't talk about school. We had a meeting about something else, and we didn't talk about school. And we should be ashamed of ourselves that we didn't talk about what school looked like. It was embarrassing. There are people who tuned into a school committee meeting, and no one asked Jeff or George how the day went. How did it go for the students? No one. And that's what we need to be doing.
Thank you. I'd just like to add to that, Hillary. As a school committee member, when I have someone approach me about a particular issue, I do exactly that. I refer them to the building principal, because there's we're kind of circumventing the process that we hire these people to engage in if we don't do that. While it's important for us to, take input from the community, absolutely, but I do think it's important to remember that we hire the superintendent, who then in turn hires building principals that have, jurisdiction and a job to oversee their building. I think it's important to remember that, if we want to be an effective organization, for lack of a better term. Go ahead, David.
At the same time, we also need to understand what our roles are and what our responsibilities are. And one of my major issues, and I guess it's related to community engagement, is the roles and responsibilities of a chair. It's a 41-page document on MASC. One of the things they talk about is that when there's reorganization, usually there's an orientation for new members. So maybe going forward, we should have an orientation so new members are informed. We receive Robert's Rules of Order. MASC does a yearly workshop on it. We have a membership here. Any workshop that we want, we can get for free because we're already paying for it. There's 5 workshops I have right here that are very relevant to everything we're doing: district goals, strategic planning, governance operations, roles and responsibilities. So maybe in order to be more up to date with everything that's going on, there needs to be more transparency, and we should get MASC involved to let us know what is our roles and responsibilities, because we have, members who have been here a while, however many years. It's been apparent that the ways we've been doing things isn't necessarily the proper way, and that's not everything we've been doing is wrong, but there's been a significant amount, especially surrounding the budget, and it's impacted our district, it's impacted our public relations with our constituents. So we need to make sure we're doing everything we can do to be on the same page, whether it's having MASC, MASS, other things like that. Do you mind if I just read my community engagement papers? Are we on that? Or?
I'd like to hold off
Yeah.
on that, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Go ahead, Chris.
So I think I'm just going to make a suggestion.
Yeah.
So we're starting to go all over the map really fast.
Yep.
And we just had like 3 comments on social media that probably we should spend a little more time actually getting. If we want to engage, then we better be able to listen and all have a conversation, because if we just start all making quick points in an effort to get it out there, we're not going to accomplish anything, right? We're just going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and then we're going to come back 2 weeks and be frustrated that no one listened to what I said or what Steve said, and we didn't do anything. So I think I would suggest that if we're going to do engagement, we do engagement.
Yep.
If we're going to do social media, we do social media. If we're going to do the strategic plan, we do the strategic plan. But pick one, let's stay on it. Let's make sure everyone has an opportunity to stay on a specific point. And then I think we'll actually build some engagement here that will actually maybe lead to some of the action that we're all looking to seek. So that would be my suggestion. I don't want to do the shotgun approach of we're going to go 100 different ways and not accomplish anything.
Sure. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, if I could ask that if we sort of table the strategic plan right now, because we do have 4 pages there, we have like 5 pages here, and then if we sort of, Jeff gives his goals, they're all supposed to come under the umbrella of the strategic plan, then go out to the schools, then maybe we can get back to the engagement of the school committee and that page. So my suggestion would be maybe something like that.
So on that note, I just wanted clarification, if this is something is there anything blatant that we shouldn't be focusing in on? Because I agree with George, we put this out there. I'm looking for clarification as I write the goals, and we did tangent out, so I appreciate that pull back in. Looking at this plan, what our hallmarks are, is there something else we should be looking at, or is this where we should be going?
So
Go ahead, Chris.
So specific to the strategic plan, 2 overarching broad comments. So one is, and I didn't pick up on this until you sent it to us. I should, because it's on our plate, literally 6 feet in front of me every meeting, right? But when we talk about promoting student success, how do we define success, right? So I think I have a feeling, I'm not saying we should do this now, but if we went around, we'd probably get 8 different answers. So what does success mean, right? And so I don't know how the hell you put that in this document, but it's certainly a conversation point, I think, of you and the administration and leadership kind of telling us what you think is success, because again, it gets this aligned. If you're thinking success is this and I'm thinking success is this, you're going to go this way, I'm going to go that way.
Correct.
And then the only other thing, and I'm going to tread very carefully with these comments, because I think I want to support you and your team. In terms of the core values, I think potentially firming them up a little bit more as this is what we will do. So less of the we're going to try, or we believe, no, this is absolutely, if it's a core value,
It's a will.
it's a core value, right? You believe it, you would run through the wall to do it. So as I look at some of these, I think there's a lot. I think perhaps maybe there was an intent to be inclusive of the various stakeholders and services provided, but there may be an opportunity to kind of share more broadly in terms of, this is what we're all going to do, not I'm going to do this because I'm in this group, or that because I'm in that group. And maybe less is more, right? But that's, you can completely, I will have no problem if you.
So more like
all those comments.
we will, instead of.
We will.
We will.
Right?
Gotcha.
So not, for example.
That's not overstepping, that's good
Yeah, for
feedback.
example, there was a good one on here. Where the heck was the language? It was right here in front of me. Oh, yeah. So, for example, we are committed to provide a safe, secure, and healthy environment. No, we're not committed. We will provide a secure, safe, and healthy environment. Like it's absolute. Like that's what we're all going to do. And again, maybe like if I look at some of those last couple, it seems like it was an attempt to be a little bit more inclusive. Those to me are more of like the tactics or goals, not necessarily of value. So
Thank you.
That's the only feedback.
No, thank you. I believe that to be true too. We will. I like that statement better. Other comments on strat plan?
Vice Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dawn?
Thank you. If we're digging into this on page 2, 1.5, a little bit ago, Jeff, you said, as far as our district, you said, just what do we envision and leave the money piece out of it. So 1.5 does say within the budgetary structure available. Look to establish school start times that are in best interests of students within the budgetary structure available. So, of course, my, opinion is, we should be looking at simply the students' best interests, healthy start times, right? Sleep is important to all of us. We need to recognize that. We really need to start looking at the science behind that. Why are we having students get up and be alert in a class at 7:05 a.m. for high school? And to do that and say within the budgetary structure available, I don't agree with that. We're putting finances ahead of students' health is really what that says, right? Well, we'd love to do this, but we can't. Well, we need to consider.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Small.
If I could ask through you, Ms. Byers, a question. I know out in the western part of the state, you have students getting on a bus as early as 5:30 a.m., I believe. How are they doing it? And that's from Keene. That's, through all grades.
Well, I would have to get more information from you on what you're referring to, Mr. Small. I don't know what school you are referring to, but I'm considering our Whitman Hanson students and what I need to do that's best for our Whitman Hanson students.
Anybody else? Mike?
When we brought the kids in last year and talked about this, I think we had, I don't remember, maybe 6 out of 7, all the kids were very happy with the start time, so they could keep working their jobs in the afternoon and this and that. So I think maybe be careful on how we word that, because they all, I think all, but maybe one didn't speak or what, but they all seem to be all for the start time the way it is. So.
I just comment on that. I mean, I think it's important to have as much empirical, data and whatever we can for these issues, and I think a lot of times kids want to do things that maybe aren't in their best interest, or they don't know isn't, so I agree that student input's important, but ultimately I think it's more responsible of us to rely on the science and what the experts recommend for our children.
I would like to respond to that meeting. That was 5 students, females, that were seniors, and I believe that meeting happened around January, so they were on their way out pre-COVID. I agree. I'd like to hear from more students. I'd like to hear from 8th graders who will be coming up next year as a freshman. I'd like to hear from freshmen, sophomores. I'd like to hear from parents' input. Maybe the parents do feel, this suits us well in our family, in our household, and the bus schedules and so forth. Let's hear from more people. That's what I would like to accomplish this year, and not hearing from 5 students who came into a school committee meeting who had never been here before and were asked a direct question and answered it. They did, but I'd like to hear from more of our community.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Hillary?
Just to piggyback on that a little bit, I do think start times are really early, but I think that we also have to consider all of the things that kids do after school. So having a job is one thing. What time does the school day end?
1:40.
1:40.
7:05 to 1:40.
So they have time if they're going to start their shift at 2 o'clock, and you have to also consider the socioeconomic status of our communities. We might very well have students who are working to help with their home finances, and I understand it might not be a big selection, but the other piece you have to think about it is sports too, right? Or kids who, to me, kids who play sports, if you start, when I used to coach high school, we would go to Duxbury, and Duxbury doesn't start till 10 o'clock in the morning, I feel like. They start very, very late. And our games wouldn't start until after 4 o'clock, and then in the fall, come November 1st, you're trying to cram in a game in the dark because not everybody gets the lights. And so while I agree that teenagers, as a high school teacher, I agree that teenagers need more sleep, and they do. I just think that if you put the start time later, they're just going to stay up later. It's a vicious cycle that teenagers fall into, and I know I'm making general statements, and I know they don't apply to every single student, but I do think getting a feel for things, but also looking at what other districts are doing. I mean, I think we have to look at what other districts in the Patriot League are doing. If we have to align our sports and our debate teams and all of these other things with what other schools are doing, and they're waiting for us to get there, or we're waiting for them, you know, that's going to throw off a whole lot of other things than a kid's sleep schedule.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a ton of factors that contribute to making a decision on this, and all should be considered. Absolutely. Dan?
You can look at it also that early start time, you're preparing from life. People go to work at 5:30 in the morning. These kids are gonna, you know, half these kids aren't, not everybody goes to college. And, you know, they're gonna be getting up early. It isn't really a health issue for those people. And like what Hillary was saying, you move it back to 8, they go to bed at 11. Move it back to 9, they go to bed at midnight. They just, like she says, they're going for their 6-hour sleep. And that's it. They're gonna complain no matter what time they have to go to school.
Go, Chris. So part of the plan is just an overall plan. So it's things I think we are going to look at, and I don't really want to, we're in the weeds again on a certain topic, and I'd like to feel if there's anything blatant that you want me to look at and change. And then we will be looking at all that empirical data, asking questions, and this is over a 3-year period, because I don't know, and I'll be very honest, I don't know what 21, 22 is going to look like, because we haven't finished the September of 20 yet. So all of these things, this is just an overview of our focus areas as a committee and as a regional district to say, these are our plans, these are the things we're going to look at. And some of these shifts will shift along the way. On March 13th, the district shifted totally. So, and the strategic plan was put to the side because we had to react. So I appreciate all the feedback. If there's anything blatant that you want me to change, or again, come to the next meeting and we can add to, and our team will be looking at those action steps and outcomes over the next couple weeks, so we can add those to the strategic plan, so we can have a plan moving forward, and we can refer to that in our goals with our principals, with our teachers, and with the superintendent.
And that was the
strat plan. We can move to engagement.
Yep. Okay. So we're going to,
because this has been engaging.
yeah.
So I know, Chris, I know we talked a little bit about engagement, and you put together that sheet, and I know some folks filled that out. Do you want to lead the conversation on engagement? Do you want me to do that, or we've talked a lot about it?
I think we can do it together. I guess I'm looking for the committee. This is a group decision, but I think the thinking was with that document is if we kind of went with the questions of where we are and then where we're going, and we kind of all participate with the questions, it gives everyone an opportunity to kind of go, opposed to just, this is where we're at today and I think this is where we need to go. Well, we kind of, so is that okay if we just take it question at a time and kind of go around? If you want to pass, you pass, but does that work?
Sure, I think that would be good.
Okay, so I think the first question we had was, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right document. Yep. So how do you feel the engagement is between the district, including us, the school committee, and the citizens of Whitman and Hanson? And, you know, strong, weak, in the middle, and what do you think? So we'll just go around this way, and if you don't have anything, you can just pass.
You want me to just like give a one-word answer, or do you want me to...
I think whatever you think. I
Okay.
mean, how would you describe, how do you think the engagement is with the community?
I mean, honestly, I think it's weak, and I'm going to speak from a personal experience my senior year, which was only 2 years ago. We had a huge group of seniors send out a district email to everyone in the school committee, all the teachers and staff, and we were trying to organize a march over to town hall to help get an 8.5 assessment passed, because at that point it was only 6.5, and we didn't hear from anyone. We tried to get a student-led effort, and there wasn't anything. We were trying to learn, try to figure out the situation and ways we can advocate, and nobody really stepped up. We had parents step up to the plate, but nobody on the committee. So that's where I say, from a student standpoint, from a parental standpoint, obviously I'm not a parent, but from my campaign and just reaching out and speaking with everyone throughout that time period in the spring, it just seems there's a lot of confusion. You know, I think it's fair to say that. And a lot of people are just trying to figure out what's going on with COVID, obviously, but a lot of people just don't know simple stuff like our budget process, or why are we advocating for this type of budget, or why do we need this? You know, where are we doing well, and where can we, you know, for example, say there's an override that needs to pass. Well, why should this override pass? And that's what I think we need to be doing as a school committee, is interacting with our constituents and saying, you know, this is why we need this override. This is what we're trying to do with it. This is how we'll improve the community. This is what we do well right now, and this is what we need to work on. So from that, I say from a committee standpoint, I don't think we do a great job, but yeah.
Okay. Mike, how do you think our overall engagement is?
I think I would go with middle. I think we can do better. I think we're doing a lot better than we were 2 years ago. We'll leave it at that.
Great.
I think it can be better.
How is it, do you think, presently?
I mean, I think part of the reason, kind of things what David said, part of the reason why I ran was because information wasn't really out there. And, you know, as someone whose children are so young and I wanted answers and I wanted to know what was going on, it was hard to find that without just watching a full meeting. So.
Great. Don?
I feel it's weak, a lot of room for improvement. One example would be, I don't recall any interaction with our senior centers and you know, greater portion of our constituents.
Jeff, you want to play?
No, I think there's always room for improvement. I need, and I'm going to use the I statement, I need the committee to get words out. And if you need to clarify with myself or with George or with John as we get information out. I think there was a real breakdown on social media, and we let members of the community run without this committee taking charge of that. So especially, and you had the perfect storm when we weren't meeting together, we were meeting on Zoom. So, but that's what I found, and the frustration from where I sat was we were letting members of the community run the narrative without our own committee members stopping that narrative. And I don't want you to engage on social media, but engage with either a phone call or a conversation with that person. And we can have that multiple. So I think that's the area we need.
We're only on where we're at, not where we're going.
Oh yeah, right. So that's where I'm at. Sorry.
Okay. Good. Chris?
Yeah, I think we're in the middle. And I do. I think it's important for us to speak with a unified message, because I think that, you know, is going to speak to our, I don't know, it'll certainly help with our credibility as a committee. And our effectiveness, you know, and the confidence that the public has in us, as you know.
Good. Fred?
I rated us as weak. And at times we have too many individuals doing their own thing on social media, as I say, you know, setting a motion, creating confusion. Open meeting law dictates that we can't really discuss positions. But we do want to answer questions from people and make sure that there's factual information out there. I agree with Jeff that it's not worth getting into a skunk war on social media, going back and forth with people. You know, you call, make a phone call, state your case, talk to people one-on-one. I think is far more effective than going back and forth, because no matter what, you can't win. On social media with that type of going back and forth.
Okay, thank you, and good, because right now we're just trying to paint the picture of where do we all think we are, so we can definitely spend more time on the how do we deal with where we are. Dan?
I would say we're like in the middle, maybe a little weak. One of the biggest complaints I always hear from everybody, the information on the website. I know we're starting to put that back together, but it really needs to be more information out there. People complain the things that used to be out there are now missing. How budgets, you know, our minute meetings, all that stuff. Once they're approved, they should go out there or something for people to read. You know, just our information just isn't there anymore, they were saying. So that's, you know, that's something we have to improve on. We have to get that information out there. Data is important to people.
Thank you. Steve?
It's below the middle. By the way, the tech just came in and fixed my microphone. So I have to repeat everything I said in the meeting. We might be here till 10. I'm sorry. It's below the middle, and the reason I say that is, not everyone has, in both communities, I'll just take Whitman for now, the desire, the whereabouts, the time, the energy. We talked about not only those families that we don't know what's going on in their personal life, they might not have that extra time to engage themselves and so forth. We could bring almost anything out, but there's going to be people that just, they either don't want to know, they don't want to hear it, or that they just want to say something that's not necessarily positive in the end. I mean, I could expand on this going on and on. I grew up in a home that, two parents. I was very fortunate. Never heard about divorce until my aunt was divorced and things like that. And my cousins were spending more time with me, and because it's my mom stepping up to the plate for her sister. You just don't. In today's world, with people's lives, are just so much more complicated. It's almost. You even told me tonight. Extremely busy day. I mean, you probably haven't seen your kids. You probably just saw your wife barely this morning or whatever. And I'm not saying that's bad for us all. We know how we have to move. We know how we have to keep going. But there just seems to be, we can improve upon a lot of things. And obviously I'm not saying where we need to be, but it doesn't mean that everyone is going to show up to the game or want to be engaged or want to understand. Local elections, what percentage comes out on a regular local election? It depends. I mean, it's usually a smaller number, and those are the people that are deciding for the whole town. Or people talk about town meetings. How many go to those? Chris even said it, our vice chair even said it in one meeting. He knew me as he was growing up, and that kind of inspired him with things. But not everyone gets that opportunity, and so it's just a very hard reach. But that's really just kind of me saying this is it. This is the raw data of what I have to say.
Okay, good, thank you. I had it as, so I think our overall engagement is weak with the overall community as a whole. I think we have good relationships with our town officials, but we need better connections with the citizens at large. I think the citizens should understand what we're doing, and more importantly, why we're doing the things we're doing. That's kind of what I had. So I'm going to keep going. This is okay so far?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to do like a 2-minute clock, or we're okay? Everyone's okay so far? Okay. Yeah. So next question was, how effective do you think our school committee meetings are specifically in building the engagement with the citizens of both towns? So actually we'll go backwards this way. Steve? Sorry.
Well, I always like a very procedural meeting. I've run meetings before in the past. I'm, currently president of the Cemetery Association at Colebrook and Whitman, and but I understand that there's got to be involvement of more than just, there's stakeholders. Being in project management for work, you realize the importance of the stakeholders, and we have many. But yeah, I think we're there, but I can't close the book and say we are. There's probably plenty of places for improvement, and I'm sure in a few minutes I'm going to hear plenty of that. Yeah.
Dan, do you think the meetings are effective in building engagement?
Well, I'd say about medium. I mean, some people have different relationships with, there might be only on one town or the other. I mean, I try to go to either side. I'll meet with any selectman on either town because it's still a region.
Yeah, so let me reframe. Let me make sure I'm getting to the essence of the question. So these meetings.
Just our meetings. All right. I thought you meant with other.
All
right.
Yeah. So our specific like this, in terms of building engagement, how effective do you think these meetings are with building engagement with the community?
I think we have to get more information out to the people when they need it. It's kind of like we have to start educating them much better, because we can say, Jeff and everybody can put out the word for whatever, but sometimes it just falls on deaf ears on certain groups out there, and, you know, it might be up to us to have to, like, you know, because we see how it always works. They take something and they twist it to their way. They're not saying anything wrong, but it's not accurate. You know, misleading, and that's where maybe we have to step in. I mean, I don't like going on social media for the same reason, you know, but maybe like the suggestion here, you call those people up and say, you know, stop the tomfoolery, you're only hurting the towns at this point. It's like, tell the truth and the whole truth.
Okay, thanks. Chris?
So I guess my answer to the question, as I understand it, is specific to these meetings.
School committee meetings.
I don't know what we do to encourage engagement more than just posting the meeting. And I'm just being honest. I might be missing things, but that's just my take, you know, and that's it.
That's it? Just looking for everyone's take. Fred?
I believe we're somewhat effective, but I believe if we have structured time within our meetings, you know, to answer questions that citizens would like to submit, you know, and foster perhaps a public, you know, forum, you know, to get people more involved that way. And maybe it's, you know, also we talk about getting the PACs to, you know, bring forward messages.
So, but as it, so Fred, less on the what we need to do, but just today.
Yeah.
It sounds like you said, you know, kind of effective. There's probably some other things we could do. Is that, do I got it?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Somewhat effective.
Got it. Jeff?
I think it's poor.
Okay.
And I think there are ways to improve, but if you want my overall, I don't think these meetings allow engagement of the community unless it's a hot topic and we have people. I would like to see it better.
Okay. Don?
I think the meetings have not been effective either in building engagement. I have an idea on how to improve that, but we can go around and come back to that.
Yes, don't lose it.
Okay.
Yeah, ineffective.
Okay.
There isn't any engagement.
Mike?
I'll go with week.
Week?
Ineffective.
Yeah, I would say ineffective or weak. It's certainly been poor.
Hold on, my notes are on a different page. Yeah, so, I mean, I agree with what you guys said. We have limited participants, and perhaps it is even worse. It was even worse pre-COVID, as we would only have a handful of people attend the meetings. So, I think this is, as a committee, we need to reassess. I think the key question, listening to all this, is think of what the point of these meetings maybe were. So it was more of a governance and public requirement. I'm not sure that school committee meetings really, I'm not sure if the genesis or the intent was truly to engage the community versus more of a requirement. So if we're saying, you know, we want to move from requirement to what it is, then we really need to think about how we do that. I think my general comment here is people aren't going to sit in a meeting for 3 hours. They're not going to sit in a Zoom for 3 hours. And it's not their problem to fix, it's ours. Because we need them. So, okay. So now we're moving from, okay, so I think to assess, where somewhere we have a lot of opportunity for improvement, both in terms of our present engagement with the communities and both in terms of these meetings and what we're doing in terms of engagement. So I think that was my individual belief, but I think I wanted to kind of hear from everyone in terms of where are we at. So it seems, so far, we seem to all kind of be in the same ballpark, so that's good. So in terms of how we could better engage with the communities, so now we can get to ideas. Your top three, so I'm going to be more of a stickler than Jeff. 3 only, top 3. If you have 7, top 3. What are your top 3 ways that you think we could better engage the citizens of Whitman and Hanson? So David will, I should start in the middle, but I'm not even going to try and figure that out, so we'll just go this way.
Yeah, so my first would be the establishment of subcommittees, like a community relations subcommittee. At Franklin Public schools, their school committee has 7 members, but they have 10 subcommittees. And their community relations subcommittee, their purpose is to review, propose, and consider matters pertaining to communication with the community about school policies, issues, and programs. Meet on a monthly basis throughout the community at various locations, including the Harvest Festival, the Farmers Market, the Senior Center, the Public Library, Franklin Cable TV Station, in order to share information and address citizens' concerns. So I think we could implement it as we could see WHCA, we could be going to our senior center, and obviously with COVID it's a little bit different, but I'm saying in our long term, and we could be going out to Hobart Pond or going to Camp Kiwanee, things like that in our community. I think that would be a great opportunity to reach out, let people know what's going on and keep them up to date. Another idea I had.
Hold on, we're gonna try something a little differently. This may blow up, but let's try it. So let's try and see if we can have some dialogue. So on that point, anyone have any thoughts as to what David just said? Makes sense? Love it? Hate it? What do you think? Anyone?
Questions?
Questions? Clarifying questions?
No.
Steve?
I would almost say, you know, we always come to the school library, and when we first built this school, we were in the theater upstairs. Why don't we move around? And I think this was brought up years ago. Why don't we even move around our meetings to different buildings? I know, now I'm probably going to give a level of confusion because everyone came to the high school and they thought that that's where it was happening, and it isn't, and so forth. But I don't know, I just kind of see that as kind of tandeming off of what David had to say.
Sure. Anyone else?
Chris? I don't think we could really move around like we would have before. We are now in where everything's recorded, live broadcasting. You move around, you're not going to have the live broadcast anymore. You might not even have the recordings we have, because we don't have the facilities in every school. Because we used to talk about holding a meeting, moving the meeting around to every school. That way there you're engaging in every school system, within the school. But now you're set up like that, and people are expecting to be able to view the meeting live and things.
Yeah.
I think there's some confusion. I'm not suggesting we go to different schools to have our meetings. I'm suggesting that with our community relations subcommittee, the chair of that subcommittee would appoint people, say, hey, you 2 members, you guys want to go to the Hanson or Whitman Public Library and talk about said discussion, and it's a discussion that the subcommittee approves on. Well, you can bring it to the full committee to approve on it, and then the community relations can go speak on it. So we're not meeting in person. We're not having anything that would violate open meeting law or anything like that. It would just be to go out into the farmers market, or go to the senior center, go to the public library. Maybe WHCA, we can work with them and come up with something that would be helpful. Like, for example, even with WHCA, I added a portion regarding public comment, and that was the second thing I was going to get into, is during COVID, as we all know, there's nobody else here, it's just us. And a lot of people in the community have reached out to me and said that they've sent emails out, but they haven't been read during meetings or anything like that. And I know public comment hasn't necessarily been on the agenda, but it's been frustrating to parents to not have their concerns heard. So I'm recommending that we could even do like a Zoom waiting room, or do some sort of waiting room and use the Promethean board right there. And when someone wants to speak during public comment, it'll pop up. They can say whatever they want. If it's something inappropriate or we need to remove them quickly, whoever's in charge of tech, whether it's someone from WHCA or Michelle or whoever can do it, we can mute them, remove them, go to the next person. And then we can also time how long public comment is, because in policy subcommittee on Monday, we recommended a new policy for public comment that will go to the full committee, I think, next meeting, so we can look at that more. And I think if that policy gets approved, I think we can start talking about what does that look like during COVID and what does that look like after COVID. And my final recommendation would be that we get liaisons. Actually, full credit to Marshall Otina for this idea. He recommended PTO liaisons. I think it's an incredible idea. I think we should have school committee members go to Duval PTO meetings, or Hanson Middle PTO meetings, or elementary levels, and we can appoint a liaison either to each school or to each school level, like elementary, middle, or high school. And then another idea I had for liaisons was a student advisory liaison. We could have the student advisory council meet with the school committee, and we can create that network where students feel they can talk with school officials and get their concerns heard. Because I know here there really isn't like a strong network like that. I know Jeff is only one person, and you can't expect the student to send like 5 emails out and CC Michelle, and hopefully Jeff has the time to get back to them. So at least in this regard, you could have students go, all right, well, I'll go attend student government, and I know school committee members are going to be there. I can ask questions, and we can kind of create that dialogue, and there's that, that understanding, and I think that would be great for us as a committee. But yeah.
Great, thank you. Mike, you have any ideas?
Yeah, a couple, David and I kind of jive together, like maybe pop-up meetings, like you were saying. Like
Yeah.
Today, 2 members are going to meet at Lake Camp Kawani or a coffee shop with Jeff. Like, obviously have a time frame. Agree, maybe appoint a social media head for us that maybe we could call and say, hey, I don't know how that's not my forte at all, so I don't know how you would go about that, but.
Okay.
Talking to some people over the weekend, is there a way to make the meetings a little bit shorter, a little more efficient? 3 hours is too long. That's what I have. On a couple of things, David, just to go back to.
Yeah,
I
no
know
problem.
Chris and I have gone to PTO meetings in Hanson. We have gone. Some of the people that are popping up now are very good, that are popping up and posting things, and more, maybe bringing them in here might be a little more efficient than us going there.
Right, well, and even right now, I guess I was kind of caught up in not the idea of going to like a different school, because in my head, I'm thinking Zoom right now, and that's a great point you bring, Mike, is that maybe we should try to get these people here. But if we have the opportunity, like, I don't expect everyone to attend every meeting for every PTO, and I get that, everyone has their own lives. But obviously, we can try to get PTO presidents here, PTO members here, and I totally am on board with that. But at the same time, during COVID, if anyone has the opportunity to say, hey, I have an hour and a half, maybe I'll do a Zoom and be able to click on the link and join their meeting. And if they have any questions that I can answer, obviously, if I can't, I'll direct it to someone else. But to even just be there, be present, and have someone there attending the meetings. And obviously, again, when we go back to in-person for PTO meetings, that might be a little complicated with transportation. But even to just appoint people, so like, hey, maybe the PTO president of Duval goes, hey, you're our liaison, I just want to update you on this, or something like that. I don't know. Just an idea to create that, transparency. And, I want to thank you for mentioning that you and Chris went out to Hanson PTO meetings, and I think it's a great idea. I think it really gets people involved, and it lets us, or lets them know that we're involved. We don't just sit here and then go home and do nothing. We care about our schools, we care about our students, and we put our students first, and we put their kids first. So, yeah.
Good. Hillary?
I think like Q&As, obviously COVID, like more formal Q&As, I'm nervous to say like, sure, I'll be on a Zoom at this time to answer any question you have. I'm not, like, we don't, I don't think anybody should be doing that necessarily, but like a more formal, pointed, we're going to talk about the transition to full in-person learning. So we will be there with you to take questions you have, and maybe then we can put them in some sort of document and then present them at a meeting. Something a little more organized. I do feel like there are a lot of questions. I think the public comment part of a meeting needs to happen. We don't have, I think any of the meetings that I've been to since I've been on the board we've not had any public comment, and that's concerning because those of us who are on social media kind of get the brunt of it when, and my thing is to, as I said earlier, to deflect and say, go to this person, go to that person for that. I think being out and about, and I don't know what that would actually look like. I know, like I coach my daughter's soccer team, so I'm involved in the community. Being involved in the community, not just being someone on the school board who just shows up for these meetings and that's that. I think that being visible is important also, to show that you're not just, I don't know, I think sometimes people might have certain motives for being on boards, and I think if we're out in the community, it looks like we care about the community as a whole, because that's what the education system is, right? It involves the community, students who've graduated, students who are just up and coming, things like that. And then, I really like your point of pointing a point person for social media. I think that for good or for bad, people get their information on social media. And if that's what we're going to do, as I said earlier, it needs to be for good, and it needs to be unifying. And if we decide as a committee that we want to make like a Whitman Hanson School Committee page and have someone run it, and like a PR person who gets out the meeting minutes, who, you know, maybe puts a document together of what are things you want to hear at this meeting discussed. To, you know, do you have any agenda items? I mean, I don't really know how that works with the community, but just things like that where I think the community would say, like, I want to hear about this. Could you talk about this? And I also think that 3-hour meetings are too much, and people are not going to come and do that, so.
Great, thank you. Don?
Sure. So two-prong here, because the last question was how effective are our engagement here at the meeting. So my comment to follow up on that, specifically in the meeting, for those who do want to sit through a 3-hour meeting or come, is really to utilize this tech board. And by doing that, I think it's important to share the information that we have in our hand, right? I believe once we get our packet, that's public document. If we're looking at it in a meeting, I'd have to clarify that. But I would like, as best as possible, if we're looking at something, I would like the community to be able to have that too. I think that's how we can build engagement for those who want to watch a meeting and be involved to that extent. For those folks who don't watch a meeting, but we would like to get our message out to them, aside from social media, which is #1 right now, is still the newspaper. So I'd like to see, and I did email, as an FYI, to the committee, a few other school districts that have an annual report, which is quite extensive, over 20 pages, and I'm not looking or suggesting that this year, but for starters, maybe a 1-page newsletter. And I don't know what that would contain, but we could do an insert in the Whitman Hanson Express, maybe in the spring, pre-budget or maybe around budget, or also at next year, opening of schools. So an insert as opposed to an article in the newspaper, because then we can make it a PDF, attach it to the website, it can be shared, it can be there as an informational who we are. And then utilizing WHCA to TV, and whether we run informational shows or 10 minutes on each of us, who we are, a little, a bio, if you will, because there are residents who are at home watching cable TV. So trying to reach those constituents. I'll make a comment regarding Facebook. Also, I had about conversation, PTOs and PACs. I think it's a two-way conversation, right? So we could attend that meeting to be ears and listen. What do they have to tell us that they may want us to bring back to the committee to share? And perhaps we have something to share communication-wise with them about what we're doing, what our ideas are for the district. Social media, I certainly have a presence on social media with my own page, and I do my best to present facts and information. And like you commented, Hillary, when you couldn't find information about the school district. So that's really what my intent is, to share information. I think it's been helpful also, Jeff, by this year, a lot of documents being added to our website, because I've been able to point people right back to that. Here's the document, here's the document. And that's really been the directive that I've learned from MASC too. Yes, people are gonna be out on social media and they're gonna have their own opinions, but we can state the facts, and it's best if you can point them right back to a district document and then turn off those comments and notifications and just leave it there.
Yeah. So again, I think it's top 3. Maybe the next item we'll just skip ahead to, after we all go through top 3, we can probably just have a conversation on something.
Yeah, so, thank you.
It seems like we all come back to that. But yeah, and I'm watching it too.
3 hours, right, guys?
Well, I think
I know.
the difference with this one is really intended for us. I mean, certainly it's available to the public, they can watch, but this is, how can we do better? So
I agree.
Jeff, what do you think?
I really think the public comment piece, looking at different other school committees and how they function, it doesn't mean that it's open public comment the entire meeting. It gives an opportunity for public comment. People sometimes even sign in as guests, and the chair recognizes that guest, and they bring up a point, maybe not for discussion at that specific meeting, but a point for us to then research or bring back as another agenda item. Because I don't also want us to engage in a comment without any information as a gotcha sometimes. So people sign in, and I think that would be an opportunity for members, not just to email a certain school committee member and then drop it at a school committee meeting for us to decide or communicate, but if they want to attend, and we can set that up if we're still in COVID world, how that happens, and then we can recognize that person either by phone or whatever, dial them in. But public comment, I think, is essential. And we've only had that when it's been hot button. And we get a lot of, it helps the committee make informed decisions when people are out there. I also think liaisons to me, if we're out and about in the community, I don't want to be the only person out there representing the district. And if we have more interactions with the PAC, if I attend, I would like to bring somebody along with them. And a PR person, that doesn't hurt, so it's not always coming out of our office. Because I am mindful that we are short-staffed. We have cut administratively, and I just want to bring that out there. Adding more stuff to our plate. I have Michelle, that's it. George has Lori, that's it. And we don't have a PR person necessarily. We do have a firm that if you want to blast something out there, and on Don's point about the Express, feel free. We do have a spot in the Express as a district. If school committee members want to write an article, I'll forego mine, and you guys can write. Michelle actually had the idea. He says, how many months in a year? How many school committee members are there? Pick one a month. I'm more than happy to share that with folks. Our administrators are more than happy to share that article space. If you want to bring it out, if you want to introduce yourself, and that's another medium that we can use.
Awesome. Thank you. Chris?
So I guess I really like the idea of having a subcommittee that is specifically charged with promoting engagement. And I think it is important to have the community feel as though these meetings are accessible and they're welcome here and whatnot. But I think it would be a good idea to encourage parents to participate in their own school and engage more with their own building principals and administrations and teachers. And because I think there's something to be said for the more engaged a parent is directly with their child's education, the better chance for success, right? So I guess it's just some of the things I was kind of thinking of is having members of our subcommittee, be involved in WHCA, maybe sporting events. We attend local youth events or high school with the idea in mind that we're prepared, with a certain, bullet points or things, and then maybe, just in general discussion, it kind of very informal. But then I was thinking of parent-teacher conferences, right? When you have these people coming in, maybe we have a couple at each building and we get a chance to engage with parents then, all the while trying to encourage them to engage more with their building. I think that's sometimes where we go awry, is we think we want to field all these things and channel them and funnel them through the school committee to the administration, and I think that's putting the cart before the horse sometimes. And then I was also thinking of events like the Conley basket auction, right? Because I think, we obviously have some very dedicated parents who have been and will continue to be involved in the PACs and the PTOs or whatever. But I do think there's a significant segment of the population, whether they're young parents or they're single parents or whatever, that they don't maybe have the confidence or whatnot to engage in discussions that affect their child. But that would be my objective, to try to get those people that aren't likely to engage.
Great. So clarifying question for you. When you talk about the subcommittee, are you looking the subcommittee as someone that would help organize things across the entire committee? Or are you, because what I'm trying to figure out is, so in your view, right, how much of this engagement responsibility resides with the few versus?
No, I think we all should engage in it. I just think the subcommittee might facilitate the engagement.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you, Fred.
And sorry if some of these items are regurgitated, but I guess that's the point to go in the middle. A liaison, as I said before, to the PACs that can report out their activities at our meetings. I also think that we need to be cognizant and careful of stepping on the PAC toes. Chris, I agree with you 1,000% that the more involvement a parent, the more involved a parent can be within their own local community school, the better off we all are. And if they're involved with the PAC per se, and then the PAC funnels, to give us an idea of what they're working on and what they're doing, and perhaps any issues that they see. We also have to be cognizant of what our charge is. Budget, policy, and hire and fire the superintendent. So we want to keep in our proper lane at the same time, but I think that being a cheerleader, so to speak, and getting messages out and taking back input is a very, very important thing for us to be doing. Administrative coffee hours, when the opportunity can present itself once again, in presentations, along with the presentations to the communities and the PACs. Q&A within our meetings and perhaps a public forum, get people involved, have them asking questions, let's answer their questions. And also, I think that within our website, it is large, it is vast, it is confusing, and there is information lacking at times. But a very simple portal that if someone does have a question or a concern, that they can go in, they can type it in, hit enter, and it will get to somebody that can answer that question for them. And I don't mean to pass it off on to administration and make Jeff's job more difficult, but that might be the more appropriate place, depending upon what the question is. Or that person gets it and then refers it to the proper building principal, et cetera. And then thanks the person for their question. It can be a, quick two-line email. Thank you, your information has been forwarded to XYZ. You should expect an answer, within 24 hours, something reasonable. And then go from there. And then whatever we promise for an answer, we over-deliver. So if we say 24 hours, we have a commitment to do it within 12.
Okay. Thank you, Fred. Dan?
Like I was saying before, and people have already touched, the town hall meetings at the different venues, going out there, getting information that way. It's just not the PACs and things, just kind of like, people are saying the coffee shops, all that, I think that's, everybody's pretty much pointing out that. I think that's a key thing. We really have to get the input. And the next thing would be the same comments here. Jeff hit most of my thing. Public comments at the beginning of the meeting with the knowledge that there's no action taken at this meeting, but could be put on a future agenda item down the line, and keep it to like 15 minutes, 15-minute long maximum, because like everybody's saying, these meetings are already way past what they should be. We should be able to streamline these, be more efficient.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Steve?
I think being right back in our schools, whether it's going with the superintendent and assistant superintendent, walking through the schools, it gives not only the teachers, students around an idea who we are, better idea, but even not just doing that while the school day is going on, also doing that when, I think someone mentioned it, those special occasions of teacher conferences, although I know those are more probably they're all on a one-to-one basis. I remember the openings of schools, the traditional way where the night before, and I've been at some of those in the past, just so that when that child goes home, Mr. Boyce was in our class on a Friday afternoon volunteering. Well, it doesn't have to be a volunteer every single week type of thing, but just be able to get into the schools, and I think that's where we're sometimes maybe not seen or noticed, even though whether the children probably don't know it, but the parents, they know who we are, but they probably just need to know who we are, in a sense. And as a side, I got my own little fan club, it seems, right before school started on Beale Avenue of a few kids coming by. One young man on a bike, he goes to high school somewhere, he's a few houses up. Aren't you someone important in town? And it kind of grabbed me the other day. Or you know, the other three other kids walking down the street, they're getting all excited for school. And of course, my thing's always to share, you know, just, it's a different type of school year. You know, I'm not trying to be their parent or something, but having the honor of being an uncle, you know, and by the way, I'm a great uncle for a second time. That's it, little guy, 9 days old. You know, it just gives you that chance to, and I always make sure their parents know me, but it gives you that chance to just say a few things. You know, you're human and they're human, and they're going to be you someday. I just think those things are important.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm in line with all of you folks so far. I think the two items I had were definitely around public dialogue and comment. I think the only thing where I'm different is I don't think we can have someone tell us something that we don't want to hear and shut it down because we don't like what they're saying. So I do think I would encourage us to be a little bit more courageous with the public comment of just bring people into the meeting. Because you know what, you know, now maybe we have to say, hey, we'll get back to you, or maybe we have to redirect. I know that's gonna happen, Jeff, but we're gonna get into it in a second, I'm sure. If someone has something to say and we don't give them the venue, I don't think we should be foolish enough to think they're not gonna find another venue to say. So we're gonna hear some things, we might not like it, it might not make us feel great, but we might as well take our medicine, deal with it head on, listen, respond. So I definitely think bringing the public, whether it's a Zoom, 15 minutes, something that we can agree on, to me is critical. And then I think what all of you said in terms of outreach, we have to find a way to get to the people. The people aren't gonna come to us, we need to go to the people. So awesome ideas, I'm not gonna regurgitate what everyone already said. So we don't lose engagement here. I think it's starting to get a little bit later. So I was thinking maybe we can do two things. So one, I think we need to talk about social media because I feel like everyone's dying to talk about social media. So we should probably spend a little bit of time on that. And then what I would suggest is, can we come to an agreement with 1, 2, no more than 3 things that we're gonna do? So we can take the easy way out and say, we'll just look at our notes and talk about it next meeting or the meeting after, and maybe in 3 months we'll do something, or before we leave tonight, we can say, here's one thing we're gonna do. So does that sound reasonably okay? So social media, I mean, we can just open it up. I mean, I think some people have already shared some thoughts. Any new thoughts in terms of, should we, I guess what I've heard so far, to try and recap, and I tried to listen as best as I could here, so no disrespect if I missed anything. I heard people wanna share, people wanna put information out, they want transparency. I heard centralization in terms of, you know, making sure that that message is consistent. People are going to use it. I heard it's tough. People are going to use it the wrong way. What else? What else do folks have to add when it comes to social media? Don?
I just want to follow up. Hillary, you mentioned about a school committee page, sort of like a central, or?
I think I piggyback on.
Okay, was that the message I just, like?
No, more, I was saying more like a liaison, like someone that would be in charge of that we could appoint out of this to maybe run, yes, a page, yes.
Oh, okay.
Or our page.
Then, yeah, the notion of a Whitman Hanson School Committee Facebook page, I believe, is highly discouraged among MASC, right?
MSAC says you can't do it.
Yes, can't do it, so I just wanted
It's the school, it's the school site has to.
Right, because even if you're putting a document out there, if it starts any type of.
Just as representative of all of us.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, and of course you'd have to shut comments off because you can't start commenting on it. Okay, so I just want to mention that. One person liaison, I certainly wouldn't want to sign up for that, and I don't know that that would be wise, you know, because one person shouldn't bear that burden. Actually, I'll speak for myself that back during budget season, I did post on a Hanson page, and I was then removed from that page. Fair enough, they're allowed to do that. But my message was, quieted there. So I respect that, but it's a fact that so I can't do that, right? I think, I looked up on my phone, forgive me. We actually do have a policy. KA says school community relations goals. So KA, it's on our district policy. The one part I'll just read, and it is relevant to social media, I believe, because it says effective, accurate, and meaningful communications that facilitate dialogue and encourage involvement in district programs and create community advocacy for its public schools. Right? I think, yeah, I never want to engage in any argumentative or controversial or never speak on behalf of the committee on social media, just getting out effective information. That's how I feel.
And I can tell you, Dawn does give out effective information.
I'm not
Visit her
looking for-
page, I just know, I know, Dawn, you're in my stream, and it's usually just Facebook, but it's great. You pulled up some things for us that are very helpful to not necessarily us, but out there. You've gotten out those words, and it was that factual, great stuff. It was very straightforward. And I said it last year. Dawn was my teacher for a little while. I learned quite a few lessons. I appreciated it. I don't know what the enrollment fee for this year would be. I'd sign up for another course with you. But, what I'm saying basically is she's done a really good job of just being that factual type of person. Now, I'm certainly not nominating you for this at all, but, you got good information out there. Very straightforward. So, thank you for that.
So let me so one thing with social media that I always struggle with is the timing of this. So my challenge with social media is you need to be. So depending on what you post, if you post something and someone responds, sometimes with misinformation, which I think is common, you need to be prepared to immediately respond, because if you don't, you can just see the spider web of God knows what happens. So personally, that's a challenge for me, because I just can't be on social media all the time looking at, I want to put something out there. I say, hey, this is something that we're doing. Citizen Mike over here says, oh, that's crazy, whatever. Can't believe they're doing that. 8 hours later, all of you have caught on. It's a problem. So the timing for me becomes a huge issue. But maybe that's depending on what you're posting and where you're posting it as well, right? So I guess, is there any, and this might have to take a separate meeting or discussion, is there a clear role that we think social media should play? Is it go ahead first.
I'm a admitted dinosaur when it comes to social media. I don't engage in it hardly ever. So I don't pretend to be, insightful, with my comments on it. I'm just, from my perspective, it presents more challenges than are beneficial in my mind, right? And especially with a group like this, where we are bound by, certain, agencies or whatever that oversee.
Laws and restrictions.
Yeah, whatever. And so I just think it might do us well to come to some type of consensus on how we'll engage, I don't really know. I'm just trying to think of I think it's important for us to speak with one voice as a committee and not have, the offshoots. So I don't know what that looks like exactly, but that's my concern. And I don't really have a solution to that. It's just an issue that I see.
I will tell you, so I quit social media this summer because I just couldn't.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Hillary?
I said I quit social media this summer.
Okay.
I am done.
Yeah.
Except that I have a Facebook page for school committee, for a school committee member, and you can have that. the feedback that I get from people in Hanson and Whitman is that it's positive. They like it because, as I said earlier, you know, for good or for bad, that is where people go to get the information. To your point, you're totally right. You know, in the summer, if someone was commenting, I could be like, sure, great now, but now my phone's in my desk somewhere, and if someone comments, I don't see it for 6 hours, 7 hours, whatever, so that is problematic. So what I have tried to do, and I think to your point of coming to a consensus, I don't post opinions. I don't post anything that someone can put an opinion into or read into. So usually what I do after meetings is I post a table of contents of from this minute to this minute, this is what we discussed. And this, you know, because people aren't going to, they're not, I mean, how long have we been in here? 2.5 hours? So if someone wants to hear about the sports, they can go right to minute 15 and click on that and watch the 3 minutes. I think that if we take that kind of approach, and then during the budget in the summer, you know, my approach was providing facts. So I shared a statistic we talked about earlier about the budgets that we spend per like professional development for teachers, for materials for teachers, all documents from DESE. So nothing that, even though people like to take things like that and say that they're wrong, you know, nothing that can be interpreted as opinion or adding, of course, people have opinions, but I think that that's what we need to be cautious of on social media, because that's going to create a dismembered message from us, if you will. So I don't know that all of us need to be on social media. I don't think that people who aren't part of it should be forced to be on it for this purpose. I don't think that's going to help engage anybody either. I just think that those of us who are on it need to be unified in the message that we're providing and make sure that we're just providing information to people, like factual information, not things that are our opinion or accusations and things along those natures.
So for those of us that are on this committee that are active on social media, are you posting on your page or in your feed, or are you proactively posting on other pages?
I just have a page that people follow. Yeah.
Who else is?
Just on my
Yeah.
page.
I got a page.
So are you posting, for example, like on Whitman Pride or Hanson Network, would you post something there, or you just
So,
post it on
so
your
what I
page?
like to do is I'll post something on my own page. It'll be on my page's newsfeed, and then what I might do is I'll use the account to share it to other pages, but I'm not individually posting on each page. Like, for example, say it was strongly encouraged by MASC. I reached out to them in advance about this to post recaps. They want you to post recaps to what happened in meetings. It doesn't necessarily have to be after the minutes are approved. They can be done prior. So I've been doing recaps, and a lot of parents have reached out to me and said they appreciate it. So what I do is I'll post a recap on my page. I'll share it onto my personal page so people who are friends with me can see it on there. I'll share it on the Whitman Pride, Hanson Network, other town pages, and then it's out there and people interact with it. And usually, you know, I get a lot of good remarks. Obviously, there's some negativity, but like everyone else has said, you know, you just deflect it to the appropriate sources. So, yeah.
Okay. Don, same? Are you just posting on your page?
Right.
Or-
Right, not really sharing it anywhere, just,
But if
On my
we,
page.
but I think you and I have PTO presidents, so oftentimes, like the Indian head PTO president will share my post to the Indian head PTO page of what had happened, and I'm sure that happens with Conley
So-
and Duval too.
So, an idea here. Do you think it would be possible for those of you that are on social media to almost develop a best practice of what's worked well, and then potentially share that with those that may be comfortable doing it, so that we're all kind of, I'm not trying to, again, I'm just throwing this out there. I'm not trying to be a restrictive,
Yep.
like this is, like a best practice.
Yeah.
Like this is a guideline, not a policy, but more of a, this is what we've done and it's worked well. And because it sounds like with some of you, you know, if you're doing a recap and you're doing a chronology, then like, why can't, you know, you share her chronology and she share your recap, like what, if it's factual information.
Right.
I mean, I guess we may have to, part of this may have to be, you guys have to legally make sure we're not gonna run afoul of open meeting law.
Well, and then we would have to work on communication too as a committee between one member to another and make sure we're on the same page and say, oh, you know, like for example, like Hillary Dawn, if they post this and I go, oh, that's great. Do you mind if I share it? And they go, yeah, no problem. And then I post something and maybe they have a question, go, well, David, in your recap, you said this, are you sure? And then I go, well, yeah, I rewatched the video. I can point you to this minutes and it's a quote. And they go, okay, just want to make sure, and they can share it. I know somebody reached out to me. I posted something like 2 weeks ago, and they just were like asking a quick question, make sure, oh, does this violate open meeting law? And I, you know, showed them that it didn't. I explained to them, I showed them the piece on the agenda, and we moved forward. And that was that. But yeah, so I think it's a simple communication, whether it's between members to each other, the administration. I'm open to creating a document that I'll share with the whole entire committee and the administration on ways I think social media has worked, ways we can improve on it, ways that it hasn't worked. I don't mind doing that, and I don't mind talking with Hillary or Don, who also use social media, and kind of get ideas from them and get their views on pros and cons. I don't mind speaking with anyone about it, but yeah.
So I would defer to the vice chair and the superintendent of maybe there's, because I think that's where we just need to make sure we're all on the same page, right? I think the intent sounds like it's really good. People are trying to share and help. But making sure that there's some clarity around, you know, for example, I think depending on where we go with some of the, so this is maybe a start, right? Depending on where we go with some of the website and technology stuff, if the district decides to put something on the website, it's probably really easy to redirect and share that through the individual pages. Now, I hear your point too, Jeff, about, well, who's doing that? So maybe there's a longer term discussion about the role that technology plays in our communication and engagement. However, maybe the start is, if you three are willing, maybe sharing some best practices to what works.
It's funny, I don't usually post after a meeting. I'm kind of exhausted and I just move on.
Yeah. It might be, you might, I don't know.
Right, but I think what David does, a recap, is perfectly acceptable because he's stating what's gone on through the meeting. I enjoy what Hillary does because you're pointing out the time frames. So I don't know that there's a right or a wrong, or that, you know, we should be...
No, but first, right, so...
Chris, could I?
Yeah, Fred, go ahead.
You know, one concern I would have about posting an in-depth recap would be, you know, we vote minutes, and prior to that, they're draft minutes. And if we're giving, you know, a complete recap, which, quite frankly, I've read in there at times more in depth than our minutes. Our minutes are a general representation of the meeting, not verbatim. And David must spend hours because it's almost verbatim of what our meeting was. But yet the committee hasn't voted them. You know, perhaps maybe a disclaimer, you know, up front saying, you know, these are the topics, this was what was said in the meeting as I recall. You know, minutes will be posted on our website after they're approved or something of that nature.
So Fred, I think the whole spirit of this conversation is trying to get us to a place where we all kind of understand what's happening and we're all hopefully sharing.
Can I just reiterate one thing too?
Yeah.
So, Fred, I just want to reiterate that I spoke with Tracy Novick from MASC and had spoke about the recap and asked if it was appropriate, and I made sure to ask if it was appropriate to post a recap prior to minutes being approved. And Tracy Novick, who runs social media, runs MASC social media, she's on the school committee in Worcester, she said yes, it's strongly encouraged. Right, and again, so before minutes are approved, it's all right, and it's strongly encouraged by MASC. So I just want to reiterate that.
Did you, so just to interject here, your recaps are very thorough. Like, they are pages long, which would be one of my suggestions would be, like, a recap to me is a paragraph, right? If I'm asking my students to recap a book, I'm not looking for 3 pages of something, and I think that's maybe where Mr. Small's getting with it, because they are very, very detailed to the point where, I mean, did you show her your recaps, or did you say, I'm just doing a recap?
Well, I explained to her, I did talk about, I gave examples, I quoted it, yeah.
So how about this?
David, I'm not trying to pick on you, I'm just trying to say that perhaps a little
Fred, hang on.
Well, you made
Fred,
a couple
hang on.
references
Fred,
tonight, Fred.
your interpretation.
Fred.
Hold on, Fred.
Hang on, Fred. So I think, again, everyone should be comfortable with what their individual opportunity and rights are, and hopefully, in the spirit of all working together, we all can come to some level of consensus in terms of what's best for the committee as a whole. So what I would suggest is we probably need a separate discussion around social media and technology. I think it would probably be helpful to almost have a best practice, because if we come up with a best practice, and if you guys talk and you find maybe there's a slightly different way or a better way, because I think your intent of what you're trying to do is clear, you're trying to provide information, I don't think anyone has an issue with that, great. There's a way to get there.
Right, and I just want to add, the reason why they are so thorough, as many people have mentioned already, is that our meetings are 3 hours long, so people don't want to tune into a meeting and the table of contents. I think it's a great idea, but sometimes, if you're skipping ahead and you're like, oh, well, is this one, the superintendent talks about this piece, you move 15 seconds ahead, you miss the conversation right there, because a couple sentences could be exactly what you were looking for. So I do make them thorough intentionally, and I do watch the videos and rewatch them, so I'm making sure I'm quoting everyone, everything's correct, and parents have reached out to me and said they really appreciate it, so they don't have to watch a 3-hour meeting and they can spend 10, 15 minutes understanding what happened.
So let's see if we can get to, so I jotted down I think almost to a person, everyone said something about public comment and outreach.
Mm-hmm.
So can we come up with, public comment, can we come up with something that we could put into effect fairly quickly? Anyone have a concept they want to float? See if we can.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on.
Hold on, Fred.
David, go ahead.
Well, public comment, I'm just going to go back to what I said during COVID. I would really like to work with WHCA as long as they're willing to work with us to create a virtual waiting room using Zoom or using some other thing, whatever we can do to get it on the Promethean board, and then kind of spend 20 minutes and say, all right, well, we have this many people waiting, they've checked in, we can verify they're from this town, or, Whitman Hanson for public comment, and then they speak. And if there's anything inappropriate, we can mute them, move on, whatever. And as other committee members have said, we don't have to answer them. We can just listen in, hear what they have to say, and if there's anything that we think we should add to an agenda item next meeting or the following meeting after that, we can do it. But I think the purpose of public comment is to hear what people have to say so we can sit on it, think about it, and then come back with a better plan. So I would like to move as soon as possible to do some sort of virtual comment if we can, and go from there.
Okay.
But yeah.
Fred?
I don't know logistically, and where we're holding meetings, quote unquote, in person. If you can combine the Zoom element, that would be an interesting thing to find out about. But at least initially, you could, by our next meeting, have, Q&A with emails, that people can submit their questions, thoughts, and ideas and have them read. That would give us something, pretty much right away.
Okay.
Can I just make a suggestion? Just the school committee where I teach, they've been doing Zooms and it's been chat boxes. And one of the issues has been funneling, because someone will ask a question and then it'll be answered, and then 10 questions later the same question will get asked, and then it's it's human nature, so if we're going to do the live public comment, which I think is very important and we need to do it, we also need to find a way to funnel the questions so that even if it's just responding to someone and saying, 5 minutes ago someone asked this question, we've already answered it, sorry. Because if we're only going to allow, someone was talking about 15 minutes of time, we really need to make it more streamlined for the public comment. I don't have an idea, sorry, for how we could do that. But that's just something that I just know we've had a ton of Q&As in my district, and the repetitive, people don't listen until it's their turn to talk, and we've got to find a way to streamline that so that the information can get to people,
Dan?
Jeff, the recent Governor Baker with the restaurants, did the open meetings
I don't
from
know.
25 beyond yet, do you know?
I'm not sure yet. That's something, we have a couple weeks before the next meeting. I think we can look at how we can effectively bring in the public, either through technology or in person.
I think the technology, I'm just listening to our comments, I think the technology is the key. I think to a person we said, the meetings aren't working, people aren't coming to Zoom. So we've got to try and maybe experiment whether
Sure.
And people are going to sit,
Zoom or all of the above.
if they can listen to a meeting on a Zoom, you can have it on your phone and kind of be half listening, and then when it's time for public comments, I've done that, and come in and say, I think that way in this era, people are not going to come and sit through a 3-hour meeting to wait for the last 15 minutes to say their thing. They're just not.
The public would have to be up front, right after the Pledge of Allegiance, both sides.
Well, that's what I wanted to distinguish, because in pre-COVID, Chair Hayes allowed members of the community to come up and speak as they wanted throughout the agenda, because it allowed for that. But with technology, are we distinguishing a public comment piece on the agenda, again, that would be right at the beginning, that if someone just had something to say, they came forward and said it, and then as we moved on to the agenda, public comment essentially would be closed, and we would not monitor that. So that's what I'm looking to distinguish.
That's how I was thinking of it, but I don't know if others were thinking, at least to start. David?
I just want to bounce off Hillary's idea real quick about streamlining. So I'm going to talk about what I was saying before with the policy subcommittee. There's a policy that we're going to be putting forth to recommend to the full committee for a vote, hopefully next meeting. And that really brings a lot of clarification. It's an MASC recommended policy. It talks about public comment. It talks about the procedure of how long it should last, their recommendation, how people would go about that. Obviously, we're in COVID right now, but without COVID, for example, they would have people sign up and put their name right there, and then we would go from there. So I think when that policy comes out and everyone can kind of read it, and hopefully we approve it, if it gets approved, I think that'd be something to post online, and then we could even reiterate to our constituency what that entails and how that would work. So I think maybe it would even be worth kind of holding off on the public comment discussion to maybe next meeting when that policy comes forward, and figuring out how we would have public comment with this new policy if it's implemented.
But I do think we need to have public comment in the next meeting, because I agree. Just because, I mean,
we can even do it.
We don't know what school's going to look like our next meeting, right? Like,
right. No, you're right.
And so we need to give the public an opportunity to speak. My only concern is having that at the beginning of the meeting. I don't know when the best time to have it would be, because if you have it at the beginning of the meeting, are we going to throw away the agenda and just start answering questions from people? Or, and then I also don't think we should have it after every agenda item, because we'll never get through the agenda. So I don't know what the best way to do that, maybe smack in the middle, maybe after the superintendent's report, because that seems to be things that, have the meat of what people want to comment on.
Okay. Dan?
Yeah, usually when you do the public comments, it's right up front. They come up, if there's anything for them to hear, you'll listen. We're not going to be replying back to them. That's just their voice to tell us what's going on, because we can't, because it's not on the agenda. We don't know what they're going to talk about.
Okay.
And we have to be cognitive, because we've had speakers in the past come up and they mention people's name. As soon as that's done, it's shut off.
So if someone has a question, if someone has a question at the public comment, and it's a question that pertained to something that happened at a previous school committee meeting, can it be answered, or does it get sort of tabled?
I think, and we can clarify this, Jeff, but I think basically if someone asked an operational, procedural question,
you can reply.
Hey, Jeff, when are we gonna change what we're doing? What time can we talk about, like, standardized lunch times? Can we, my child is in cohort A. When can they go into cohort B? Like operational, procedural. If I wanted to not go on the bus, I think that's perfectly fair, right? It would be the same as someone just picking up the phone and calling me. I think where we're going to have to be careful is, hey, I want to talk about start times. Right? Or I have a complaint against a teacher. Or that's where, okay, hold on, we can't do that here. So
they're allowed to express a comment, and that's really what it is. They can say a comment, right? And we're not bound to.
Do you think it would be worthwhile or possible to get a volunteer to moderate the public comments? And maybe some of the public comments could be addressed by referring the individual to the building principal and how best to contact them with a number, you know what I mean? Like, so that we can conduct our meeting, and like maybe to Dan's point, that there's a time slot in the beginning, or wherever in the meeting that is, allotted for that, but someone else is manning it. Because I know how difficult it is for Bob to utilize the chats and things like that. And everybody here is pretty engaged in the meeting and doesn't really have the ability to monitor anything like that.
Jeff, because we're throwing a lot at you, so I want to make sure we don't completely go off the rails here. What do you have thoughts?
So I would prefer, and I think for structure of a meeting, having public comment at the beginning of the meeting. And if people bring in a comment, and I'm piggybacking on the school start time. I'm resident so-and-so, I have an issue with the school start time, I'd like to be heard on the next agenda. That's an opportunity for a comment that we're not responding to. Or people come in with a comment saying, you know, I think the budget should have whatever.
Right.
It's not necessarily a response with this committee. I think it's an opportunity for someone to be heard, and the committee not necessarily responding back, and maybe inviting them back to the next meeting. But it's an opportunity to be heard, so it's not an interactive dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think it should be limited to about 15 minutes, and we can do that via Zoom. We'll experiment and tweak it. I think we can become more masters of that piece of it. But my concern about an open Zoom is the person who has a question, we answer the question, or they have the comment, and then 25 comments come after that, or go off the rails. So I think we can structure that, and actually on our next agenda item, put the rules of engagement for the public, so they have an idea, and we can use social media to get that out early, you know, or through the website. So I think we can have an opportunity and try it and see how it works. Ideally, in the non-COVID world, we get people to come to a meeting, because I think it's a better dialogue when people are here present than behind a screen, because we're not going to necessarily see them. So I think we can play around with the technology, and it's not overwhelming at this point, but I think that would be my preference, to open it up to say, hey, look, do the pledge or whatever, and public comment is right at the beginning of the meeting, even before we get into the minutes, and we're not necessarily deviating, or if they have a comment about an agenda item, they can have their say prior to us diving into the meeting.
Yes, Fred.
Just for everyone's information, I did take the liberty of looking up the governor's new ruling, and the limit for indoor gatherings remains at a maximum of 25 people for all communities.
Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, if you want a good example of this, look at like the Board of Selectmen's meeting at the beginning of theirs. They open it up for public comments. Most of the time, just like us, they're not gonna be able to reply back, but it's a way for the public to say, you know, hey, you know, my street, sidewalks aren't being done. Well, all right, now it goes off to the town to go look at it. That's a good example of what we're gonna have to set up.
So Jeff, do you think it would be, I mean, so I want to get some, as much as anyone, I want to get something done, right? But at the same time, I want to make sure we do it right. So do you think this is something that we could have in place at the start of our next meeting, or this is something that you'd want to build the program?
No, I think we can have it in place at the start of our next meeting.
We'll try it.
I don't see a reason why not. As long as the majority of this committee, and you don't have to vote, but I get an eye roll that says, hey, we'd like it at the beginning, and then we can tweak as we go along. But we can do that, and I'll experiment how we can do that virtually with folks, to make sure that they're heard.
Plus, the chair has to, chair controls it anyways.
Absolutely. I mean, I think he might want to delegate to Jeff or George. Somebody has to control that waiting room.
Vanna's going to be back in the back of the room.
But so there's probably a way to do that, and then really from the Zoom, we're probably just playing the audio, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's what I would do.
Maybe we can somehow get to WHCA and bring them in, but for the first one, if they could just be heard.
If that's something, the direction the committee wants to do, we'll absolutely look into it and make sure that it's on the agenda for next meeting, and there's an opportunity for the public to comment.
Right.
Chair?
Yes, Fred.
The one thought I had is why not allow participants the same way I'm participating right now on the conference call. We could publish a number and perhaps a different meeting idea, something. You know, the only problem is you're going to probably have a lot of people in the waiting room, and I don't know if internally we can control that.
And that's my shaking my head concern right now, is I'm not sure. So let me look into seeing how we best can and pilot this out for our next meeting.
Yeah, because I think Zoom is conducive to waiting rooms and holding and muting, and a conference call, you're going to be, you know, if you have 20 people all speaking at the same time, you're going to get 20 people all speaking at the same time. So, all right, good. So it sounds like we have an action item. I think overall, really good conversation. I think the only other question I would have for all of you is, you know, what do we want to do to tackle outreach? Is that a subcommittee? Because I think there was a lot of tremendously really good ideas about getting out. Is that a subcommittee that we want to form, or is that a discussion that we all want to And I know this is a lot of time and energy for everyone to do.
I would say a sub.
So what do you want to do? Do you want to do a subcommittee, or do you want to do a separate meeting?
I do like the idea of a subcommittee in the long run, but I think in the short term, I'd be interested in getting everyone's input on how to form that, you know, and what direction we want to go in, you
I
know?
second that. I think more committee overall discussion moving towards a subcommittee.
Yeah.
So same thing. I know it's getting late, but maybe we could all agree on, like, here are 3 things we're going to do. We're going to, whatever. We're all going to write a newspaper article. We're all going to go to a PTO, whatever that is, but maybe we come together and agree on an action step. Or 2, or 3. Yes? Is that what we're thinking?
Tonight?
I was thinking the next, I'm game, but I.
No, I think it'd be great. I mean,
Next meeting.
yeah, let's think about it and come back to it and do it next meeting. I think that would be best.
Great.
Yeah,
All right, I'm done.
all right. So before I take a vote to adjourn, or get a motion to adjourn, Chris, I know this was your initiative, and I think it's crucially important, as cumbersome as some of this stuff is to deal with. I really appreciate your leadership, and I think it's something that's really going to benefit the district going forward.
No, I think this is a group effort. I think all of our intentions are really good. I think we have a good group. I think everyone's intentions are good. I think the structure makes it really hard to have a conversation. I think it's just hard. So I'm glad we hopefully we're able to do that tonight, share, listen. I saw everyone like kind of taking notes, so honestly, if we can't get engaged here, we're not going to be able to.
Okay. Yeah.
Just one more thing before you adjourn.
Yeah.
So I appreciate all the feedback today. We'll be putting together some things for the next agenda. I want to make sure that there's always education and kids as part of a focus for our meetings. And I said this at one meeting, getting away from always the money talk. So we'll always have something around goals or the strategic plan at a meeting coming forward. And then for the next meeting, it is listed as October 14th. I'm making a formal request if we can do it on the 21st. I have some personal things I have to deal with, and Michelle's going to be on vacation, so there's no way within the next 2 weeks she's going to be able to put together what we've talked about today. So if we can move the meeting to October 21st at 7 o'clock, I would appreciate that.
I'd make the motion to move the October 14th to the 21st meeting at 7 o'clock.
Second.
Fred, second. Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Dawn?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Yeah, and Chris, my scriven is yes as well.
And I'm a yes.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Thanks.
Fred.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Dan. Roll call. Fred?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, folks.
I don't know if you did.